Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the stream, and welcome our special guest, Eddie the engineer. Everybody give him
how's it going?
Everybody give him a warm welcome, please. Hi, Bill Brothers. Hi, Fizzy Steck. It's just chatting with you. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Colin. Hi, Jeff. I'm not going to go through the full list of names today. So I want to say welcome, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So let's go through the stuff first. Can everybody hear Eddie?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Let's give that a little bit to get through the buffer. And I just turned on the Polymaker Filament giveaway link. So link is in the description and it's about to be in chat.
Perfect. Sounds like they can both hear us.
People are here.
Or they can hear us both.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So I just put in and pinned the Polymaker Filament link. So we'll do that at or before the 3-hour mark today, everybody. So let me get caught up here. Okay, audio is low. Audio is low on Eddie or me or everybody? Because it may be on Eddie. Let me up Eddie's volume.
Yeah, we can just see how it goes.
I upped Eddie's volume. Let's see how that is.
At least on my end, it sounds like we're both equal, but who knows how it is on the stream because I know you have the different OBS options.
Yeah, you're hearing me through my headset.
Got it. Okay.
Everyone's hearing that, but there's a volume level in OBS that I'm setting.
That makes sense.
Eddie is better now. Okay.
Perfect.
That is better. Awesome. So welcome, Eddie. This is your printer.
Yep.
This is an exciting printer. I've been aware of this printer for over a year now. So why don't we just do a little short casual interview. How did you start? How did this come to be?
Yeah, so if you go all the way back to when I started getting involved in 3D printers and the Voron community, I did the V1.8 design, and then Steve and I just checked my Masumi orders. In December 2020, I started looking at, Steve and I started looking at different Z options for Tridex because I knew that was one of the key upgrades we needed to get the larger sizes, like a 350 by 350. And at that point, Steve took over basically all the development and release for Tridex. And I started looking at, Trident. And that was around the time where Doom Cube was starting to come into play. So I bought all the parts for a Doom Cube IDEX printer based on the Trident. And so that was over 2 years ago at this point, which is really crazy to think about. Unfortunately, how long it's taken. But, I built that printer, I think in the summer. I did the first test prints. And at that point, when I was starting the project, I didn't even realize I didn't know if the firmware was going to work at all. But luckily, like Turcone was already doing that on a side project without even me realizing it. So he got all that together. And then I started realizing, well, this could just be a standard size Trident. We don't need, this massive 400 by 350 build plate. Let's make this a manageable size for people to use. So that's kind of where it came about. How can we fit all the motors in the standard enclosed Trident frame instead of sticking them off the back like that bigger printer was. So it's really exciting to see, people building them. I realize it's not, the bill of materials isn't quite there, manuals aren't quite there, but I think one of the questions from Colin earlier was how many are there? And I think there's probably 10 to 20-ish, but yeah, I know those numbers keep increasing slowly, which is awesome.
Awesome. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue kind of chatting about Tridex and some of the design decisions and stuff like that while I can clean up some of the build. So the idea is last week, we got it to the point of homing. We didn't get it to the point of pushing plastic, but between streams, I did push plastic on it. So I'm going to do some cleanup. We can talk about some of what made you decide on this particular gantry configuration, what it's actually called, how it actually works. Maybe we can go into
Definitely.
stuff like that. So let's start with what were some of your goals in the project, and what made you choose this particular, or how did this evolve into this particular kinematic configuration?
Yeah, so I think one of the original inspirations, or as I started working on this configuration, there was some development out of the China Voron community where they were adding essentially a third belt on top of the whole entire gantry in order to, essentially drive that extra degree of freedom for this second tool head in X. And, while, they got it working, it looked great. I didn't quite like the packaging. It kind of felt a little bit weird to have it not really balanced on like a left and right perspective. I didn't know if it was going to work. It obviously worked good enough for them, but I wanted it a little bit more symmetric and balanced. And so also the concept of running 3 belts or even 4 belt passes in that configuration across the x-axis kind of made it a little bit cumbersome, in my opinion. And so that's when I started looking at, okay, what else can we do? How can we essentially keep the 2 belt paths across the x-axis, but then add enough other, belts or things like that outside the x-axis to actually control everything. And that's where that hybrid core XY kinematics came about. Essentially adding those 2 Y motors to control the x-axis moving front and back, but then keeping the same AB motors essentially from a core XY printer to drive the tool heads in X1 and X2. And so, again, thanks to Turcone to get all the code working, because again, I was trusting when I got to that point that hopefully I could figure it out. I know in the past, if I actually tried to do that, it looks a lot more complicated than I could have gotten it. But thanks to the community for kind of making that continue. So,
what are some of the other options there are for IDEX kinematics?
Yeah, so there's that third belt, essentially keeping the same Cartesian style and then adding a third belt. Again, I didn't like that because of the imbalance, or at least perceived imbalance on my part. And then there's the marked forged kinematics, where you have the same Y belts on either side controlling the x-axis. But then instead of looping the belts around kind of like in a core XY pattern, they actually keep the belts, the left belt on the left side and the right belt on the right side, and then they pass back and forth across the x-axis. And so there again, you have 4 belt paths across the x-axis. It's balanced and it should work great in concept, but again, I didn't like that extra belt paths across the x-axis because it was difficult to package. And then the other one that would be probably most practical as you scale the size would just be a standard Cartesian setup. So the same Y belts on either side, but then mounting the X motors to the x-axis. So then your X belt loop is really short. And that would be great if you're trying to do like a 1 meter printer or something bigger like that, because that keeps the belt lengths manageable. Otherwise,
the gantry weight goes way up.
Yeah, it does. Yep. But there's always a certain trade-off where I don't know what that point is, if it's 400, 500, 600 millimeters. The belt lengths on this printer are already getting fairly long.
Right.
Yep. And that's where my hesitation is with, recommending people build a lot bigger Tridex, is that, again, if you think about the kinematics in a purely stiffness perspective, a core XY printer toolhead has 2 belts attached to the toolhead. So you have 4 belts essentially pulling away from the toolhead X carriage. With Tridex, that gets halved. And so your X stiffness is actually half of what the comparable core XY setup would be. And that's really, it looks the same as a core XY. It's like, it should be identical to a 350 by 250, Trident printer as far as belt stiffness, but it's actually not. It's actually half of it. And so that's why trying to keep the frame size as small as possible is kind of critical. So,
Right.
yep.
So the what do you call? Did you cover what do you call this kinematic setup?
So originally, before I had talked to Turcone, I was calling it Core XX plus YY because you're essentially saying my Y-axis is strictly Cartesian. There's nothing weird about it. It's just forward and backward. But the X motors are actually X plus Y kinematic. So just like Core XY, you need to move 2 motors in order to go forward or backward or side to side. The same thing with this setup. When the tool heads go front and back, if you just drive the Y motors, as you saw when it was homing against the back of the printer, your tool head will tend to go one way or the other. And so to go a straightforward or backward move, you actually need to drive both the Y motors and the X motors to keep the tool heads at the same X position. So that's where that Core XX plus YY came from. But again, the official term in Clipper is Hybrid Core XY. And then another name that, again, people know it by is the Mark Forged kinematics, which from the kinematic equations are identical. You still need to move the same motors to get the same positions, but the belt paths between a Mark Forged and this Hybrid Core XY setup are different. So,
Are there any other community or hobbyist projects out there that use this that you know of?
that is a great question. At least 2 years ago when I started looking at it, I hadn't seen anything else using that, which is kind of scary because printers have been around long enough that if someone else is not doing the thing you're doing, you're worrying that like either they haven't thought about it, which I was like, of course they have, or else because there's some like fatal flaw. And so that was one of the concerns initially building it. It was like, okay, is there something fundamentally wrong with this configuration? And I don't think there is, other than, again, those belt lengths are fairly long. So,
Well, I just got a bottom panel on it, so the printer's
Nice.
complete now, right? It's done.
It looks nice.
It's
Yeah,
done. Stream over.
I love that the dark gray with the light gray skirt mesh. It just looks so clean.
Yeah, I mean this is really pushed by you and Hart, this skirt mesh, and I'm definitely on board. I like it, and it's not too hard to do.
Nice.
So,
I see that I don't know how to say his name. Someone said that the Rat Rig V-Core IDEX is using it, which is awesome.
oh, okay.
I honestly need to look more into Rat Rig because I really haven't, but I should check their stuff out. So, again, there's a lot of interesting different problems that we're going to experience today as we do the first test print that are issues no matter if you're doing a Jubilee tool changer or black box or E3D or an IDEX machine, like with nozzle ooze and things like that. And so calibration alignment. So like, for instance, those nozzle wipers are actually inspired by black box that I saw at Murph last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And originally I was going to use off-the-shelf parts or like cut silicon wipers from them, but then I decided to just try to make it completely off the shelf and actually cut it out myself because the black box required some slots in the silicon that were a little bit difficult to make. So,
Do you know if other does RepRep firmware support this setup?
that is a great question.
And it's okay. If someone in chat
Yeah, I
probably
think-
knows.
Yeah, and I think that since Mark Forged kinematics have been around for a while, I think I would assume that it's probably supported. Yeah, so. And that's actually an interesting thing because I'm not sure if other firmwares have duplication or mirrored mode enabled for this kinematics, because then you could actually test it out if you wanted to go to a different setup. Whereas with Clipper, it's still pending more firmware work and development to get that. So.
Are there any forks out there that have that enabled right now?
So back in the summer of 2021, when I had originally, I'm sorry, when I had
Okay.
originally built that big IX printer, that branch that I used actually had mirrored and duplication in a PR. Since then, some of the reason it didn't get merged in at that point was Kevin was actually looking through a kind of a refactoring of how different modules were being written for controlling extruders, like syncing them, that type of stuff. And so at that point, you know, essentially it was like, oh yeah, Kevin will refactor stuff and then we'll revisit what this looks like. And Turcone's just been really busy. Life happens. That's why this project's been slowly progressing for 2 years. And so, yep, that's where we're at. So I think, you know, theoretically it could be added. It's just a question of who has the skill set and time to work through the PR process and getting everything signed off on. So,
Got it.
Yep.
There was a question here. Where was it? Oh, so someone asked a question about mini stealth burner on here, and I know we've chatted about that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's actually really exciting because if you think about stiffness or the resonance of the printer being a function of the tool head weight and the belt stiffness, there's essentially 2 plays you can do there. Either, you know, switching from a stealth burner to a mini stealth burner, you'd have to look at the weight and that sort of thing to figure out how much improvement there would be. And so that's one thing. The other advantage is I think mini stealth burner or maybe the V0.1 toolhead, one of those is actually also narrower. And that doubly improves because you get the extra build area. And you might even be able to make the printer smaller as well from a width standpoint. So if you're looking at the printable area of a Tridex right now, you take the essentially X travel, so 350 millimeters in Steve's case and in my case, and then you subtract off 2 times the width of a single tool head. So in this case, I think stealth burner is in the 70, 75 millimeter range. So just do 75 for a nice round number, and you get essentially 350 minus 75 times 2 is right around 200 millimeters of X travel or X printable area for a dual material. And that's kind of one of those big trade-offs.
Yeah, it looks like mini stealth burner is less than 60 millimeters wide.
That would be awesome because then you could almost get the full width of a 250 build plate in this configuration. So, yeah. And I think one of the reasons I haven't done that yet is because scope creep.
Oh yeah.
I wanted to get something working, but I really am excited to see what people do with that. Because again, if you can get the belt paths with the one pass through and things like that with mini stealth burner, that would be a great alternative to look into. So,
right.
Yep.
So I am setting up the PTFE tube routing and using these modified holders that I modeled. Now, these are going to end up probably in a release, but I'm going to throw these out on my GitHub in the meantime because a lot of people have asked about them. But what else do we have? Hey, Frank. Hey, Sanity.
There was a great question.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let me scroll back in chat just a bit. I think from Dark Neutrino. How does resonance compensation work on this? And that is a great question. So there are a few different ways you could do that. So currently with mainline Clipper, there is a bug for Hybrid Core XY where theoretically you should just be able to set input shaper parameters for the active toolhead and then include those in your toolhead switch macro so that it applies the correct parameters for the active toolhead. However, based on how the stepper motors are implemented and things like that, how input shaping is implemented, that actually doesn't work right now. There is a PR out that fixes that, and it changes, I think, how the hybrid core or how the input shaper applies to different stepper motors. So I'm actually on that PR branch right now because it was such a big improvement in print performance. Once I finally got that fix working, that I'm just kind of stuck in the past on that PR branch.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think about accelerations in this case, again, our belts are the same length as a 350 by 250 Trident, but then the stiffness is half. So where a Trident might be good for 10,000 acceleration, maybe here we're good for 5,000. And then if you add input shaping, 5,000 is great. But if you don't, then maybe you're going to get ringing in the like 2,000 to 3,000 millimeters per second acceleration range. So input shaping is really critical for this printer, just based on the stiffness. So.
And what did you say without input shaping? What did you recommend for a max?
In the 2,000 to 3,000 range, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and then also your Steve, as we were talking last night, you noticed that it shook a lot when it's moving around. And the nice thing about input shaping is it does really kind of dull that. It doesn't shake quite as bad once input shaping is enabled. I think I was even getting some skipping occasionally at higher accelerations, but then once I added input shaping, that seemed to help. So
okay.
Yep.
So I have a config that I was playing with. I set the max to, I think, 5,000. So
okay.
I'll dial that back a little bit.
So like I think 5,000 is great because you can use those for travels, but then for your actual printing moves, especially in external perimeters and things like that, it may be good to dial that back. So
awesome. I wanted to say thank you to Sinew for becoming a member real quick.
Awesome. Yep.
So.
Dark Neutrino asked another question in the case of mirrored mode. So in this PR, you actually don't need to set input shaping when you switch between tool heads. You actually define 3 values in a Y resonance, a X resonance, and a dual carriage resonance. So essentially your T resonance. And
so I don't know if folks watching have noticed this. This is the first time actually, but I do have some performance issues that Eddie and I figured, and I just heard a pause in what Eddie said. So we're going to keep going as much as we can. This has been much better than our testing so far. But I wanted to note that I need to contact my ISP because I noticed my speed tests are down as well. So So
and if it gets too bad, we can always cut off my video. But I think as long as it cuts out a little bit, it's not a big deal.
Yep. So sorry, go ahead. Oh, I think we might have to cut the video. It's already it's starting up again. Yep.
Cool. So with mirrored and let's see here, mirrored and duplication prints, I think the updated PR branch should work for input shaping. But again, since those modes aren't actually enabled at the moment, there's no way of testing that. So we'll have to see once that gets fixed. So.
Right. I am putting spool holders on right now. So we're getting ready to get this moving and pushing plastic.
That's awesome.
I want to say hi to everybody who's joined up. Any other questions in chat? We got a lot of questions generated by AI apparently.
Oh, that's fun.
What are some of the most innovative kinematic designs you've seen in the 3D printing industry, and how do you think they will shape the future of 3D printing? That's
so many AI questions. That's hilarious. Oh man.
I think if you go out to the RepRap wiki and just browse, isn't that like a treasure trove of weird things that people have tried?
Yep. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I haven't really looked at that much. So I think probably the more exciting stuff I'm interested in, or that would be cool to get in the kind of hobbyist space, would be like the carbon fiber co-extrusion type setup. I think, again, how stuff is right now, where you can do single material, single color prints with ease, and even getting into, you know, tool changer stuff is almost mainstream. If we could get to that point where printing with soluble supports or dual material is easy for the average consumer to just hit print, I think that'll be a big step forward for adoption, in the sense that, you know, your aunt or your nephew or whatever who has no idea how to design a part for 3D printing could just hit print and it would just magically appear without having to worry about supports or those considerations. I think that's a critical step in bringing 3D printing more to the masses. But then after that, you know, there's a lot of other cool technologies that that are, I'm sure, being developed. But that's the big thing for me.
I'm going to give a quick view of the back of this printer before I power it on, but I think my PTFE routing actually looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Look at that. That's kind of fancy, symmetrical. So
how does it look when you push the axis all the way to the back?
Probably terrible. I'll try it here in a second. I
nice.
think based on your suggestion, I'm going to angle these in the next revision. So I'm going to modify this part and angle them. I left myself a little extra tubing, I think, and I left myself plenty of extra line.
Yep.
So let's go here.
There's a few questions I'd like to
Yeah,
answer. So the IDEX coming to 2.4. So me personally, I think Tridex, where it's at, is probably about the furthest I'm going to push it for now. IDEX for 2.4, if you think about the gantry stiffness, so Trident or Tridex has the gantry rigid mounted to the frame. So if you're pushing high accelerations or things like that, you're moving a lot of tool head mass, and that stiffness of the gantry is really important. So you can always beef it up with, you know, 40/40 extrusions or things like that to stiffen the frame up. But with V2.4, how it is right now, you know, as your x-axis moves around, that gantry is always going to kind of twist and move around a bit, especially when you have, I don't know how heavy the x-axis is. It's probably, close to 800, 900 kilograms, somewhere in that range. I would have more concerns about V2.4 stiffness. I know people have built it though. It's in the it is in the I think one of the original people actually built a 2.4, which is really cool. So option 350Z, yep, you're the guy I'm talking about. And then there was another question: are you planning a fine Z adjustment for the second tool head sometime to be able to run the machine in mirror duplicate mode? So that is a great question. That is something I haven't gotten to, and since my primary use case for this is going to be the, you know, soluble supports or you know, follow or breakaway supports, and so that's not really something I'm pursuing at the moment, because I think where Tridex is at is kind of meeting my needs, and I'm in a period of time right now with my life where work's really busy. So however, one of the things that is really exciting is I know people are working on a tap implementation for Tridex. And if you think about tap, it's essentially a tool head on a linear rail. And so adding an adjustable like minimum set screw limit or something like that, so you can adjust where that tool head rests when it's at the very bottom of its travel. That would be a really clever way of essentially utilizing all the work that Bad Noob and the team already put into tap, and getting that fine Z adjust. So that's where I would tend to recommend people go, you know, if you're looking into that in the future. So,
well, I think that kind of highlights a challenge in getting tap to work on here too, is that there's going to be much more variation in where those parts fall in Z. So that's going to make that a requirement to be able to adjust that in some fine fashion.
Agreed. So, let's see here.
Hey, Leo, I tried to get the Y belts on there for you. Was that adequate? So.
Did I say 800 kilograms? That would be a pretty heavy gantry.
Yes. It collapses my desk here. Okay.
That's a great question. Steve Builds, will you be showing belt tuning tonight?
Miss.
That would be a. I feel like you could almost do a portion of a stream just talking about that, like down the road once you get, let's say Input Shaper gets merged into a mainline clipper, or you want to go to the PR branch and do resonance input shaping. That might be a fun thing for you to tackle down the road. But
Yeah, and honestly, it can be done much more methodically or scientifically than how most of us do it. I mean, for the most part, yeah, that feels good.
Yep.
If an artifact shows up on a print, then maybe that might be a something that you point to and start tweaking to see if it goes away. But on a build, and I've had very good luck doing this, so I haven't had reason not to. And it's hard to quantify that as the problem. I've never done the frequency tuning for belts. I've always just kind of, okay, that seems about right.
Yeah, and one of the things I've done, especially with this, is for a Core XY Voron printer without dual tool heads, I have certain peak frequencies in mind when I'm looking at my X and Y resonance peaks. For Tridex, those frequencies actually shift. So for a Core XY printer, your X resonance is I think it was maybe like 1.2, 1.4 times the peak of the Y frequency. For Trident or Tridex, it's actually different because your Y frequency is actually higher, is stiffer than a Core XY printer, because you have those very short loops that are controlling the X-axis. But then your X frequency is lower. So both your X and Y peak frequencies end up being a lot closer. And so I don't remember offhand what the peaks are that I've tuned in the past, but yeah, and I ended up doing test tuning prints, actually using the ringing test print instead of the accelerometer, just because I had some concerns about the tool head boards and where I had them positioned, if they were actually measuring the correct values.
Yeah, and you've used one of the spots for that with an end stop. So
yep. Yeah, exactly. Yep. So it's a little bit tricky.
For toolhead 0, well, one thing you could do, I wonder if you did it on this spot for toolhead 0 and then do it like on the front for toolhead 1 and see how they compare.
Yep.
Might be something to try.
Yep.
So, yes, one who schemes. We are planning on printing today. So the plan here is I've gone through and kind of cleaned up. I put a bottom panel on it, so the printer's done. PTFE tube is here, and I set the top panel on, and they seem to align fairly well. I think it would print fine with the top panel on. We're going to leave it off for visibility's sake and being able to see things today. But I think we're ready to kind of go through. I'll talk a little about some of the things that we've discovered over the past week that are kind of weird that need to be worked on still. But it's printable, so we're gonna do that. John, thanks for becoming a member. So this build is based on your build, and most of the configuration has matched up almost exactthis So
that's fantastic to hear.
Really, with what we're going to do today is do some fine tuning. This whole series, I think from the beginning, I said this is going to be a little different build series. Most of the things I build are at a complete state. They're not. This is complete. This is awesome. I'm really pleased with it. But things like a manual and final configuration and stuff like that isn't done, which is fine. But that also means I'm kind of learning as I go as well. So it's not, I'm trying to make sure that this doesn't come across as a tutorial. It's more of a follow me along on my journey to get this working. And I'll give updates as I can going forward with what I've found out and what I've tweaked on it.
Yep.
So,
and I think that's a really good point, especially considering where this project is and where it may be in the future. Because again, as I said, I do have work and life commitments there's a reason this project has taken 2 years to kind of get to this semi-final, semi-complete state. I'm not positive if I'm actually going to finish a manual or finish an official release. And so I think I'm kind of happy with where it's at, because if you built a Voron printer, you're comfortable with, tuning your Trident or building a V2.4 or a V0, you almost have enough contextual knowledge to take the bill of materials, the CAD, the kind of, Cliff Notes versions of an assembly guide and figure it out the rest of the way. So this is a complicated build. This is not something you should just dive into if you have an experienced clipper or Voron printers or Core XY or all these different things, because it's a culmination of a lot of complexity. And it's a really exciting printer, especially in my case, if you add the Doom Cube frame with or Easy Bake or Easy Frame, where you have the insulation and things like that. Printing ABS at 75 degrees Celsius enclosure and being able to print with soluble support. It's a workhorse, but you have to know how to build it, and there's a lot of tricks in there. So
yeah. So I just ran the filament through the guide tubes, and it was a little tough. I don't know what I grabbed here, but if I have problems with that, I might have to swap those out. I thought these were PTFE, but there's no kinks in the line, but it was definitely tougher than I'm used to. So, Derek, thanks for becoming a member. Okay, so it is on, and let's just go back through kind of a homing routine and just show this right here, and we'll just do a home. So the homing sequence on this is different from what we normally do on a regular printer. Now, why do we home Y first? So this we home Y first and then X.
Yeah, so this is a really critical point. So if you think of tolerance or how repeatable your alignment's going to be, as you home Y, since you have those dual end stops, it's going to de-rack the x-axis. So if there's a slight tweak one way or the other, as soon as you home it and everything, both end stops trigger, your y-axis or your x-axis should be perfectly perpendicular to your.
What happened? What happened? I lost Eddie. Why did that do that? Okay. Oh, give me a minute. I lost Eddie.
De-racking that creates a buildup of error in your X alignment.
So I lost you because I was dumb.
It looks like, yeah.
Okay, we should be back.
Okay.
Hold on a second. PF Tennis, okay. Thanks for gifting the memberships.
Looks like you still have your window up with where I used to be.
You should be seeing it here in a second.
Okay.
I had a brain fart, and it wasn't a network. It was the drop packets up here. Not here.
Okay, sounds good. So I'll go back through that. Back through that. No, you're good. So the key point is, if you're homing Y, we have dual end stops. So your x-axis and y-axis after homing Y should be perfectly perpendicular. If you home X, if it's not perpendicular, it'll align, and actually your tool heads will shift some, which is maybe part of the reason why Steve's X tool heads shift around a little bit, but maybe not. If you home X first and then home Y second, and there is a correction in the skewing of your x-axis, then that error in the skew will propagate to your X alignment. And then your offset's going to vary every single time you rehome, which is really annoying. That's one of the biggest kind of tricky parts about an IDEX printer, is getting those calibration, the offsets for your nozzles perfect. And so that's why we home Y first. We get rid of any skew or misalignment in the x-axis, and then we home X last, so there's no error buildup in all the different homing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So
that was probably a difficult way to follow.
No, but that's fine. So last stream we saw that when I home Y, I get a shift in X on each tool head. That is not resolved. We've tried. Yep. I don't know that it's a problem yet, though, because I haven't tried to do a dual color print on this yet that has to line up.
Right.
I'll
And
find out
so
if it's
so
a
the
problem
thing
once I
is
do
that
that.
it looks bad 100%, and I need to figure out why that's happening. But since you are homing X after it shifts, any error you would have essentially gets canceled out. So it shouldn't really affect your X offset at all, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So that's what I'm counting on. And if it
Yep.
doesn't, then it's something we're going to have to work on, which is fine.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and home so folks can
Perfect.
see this homing. Now, another weird thing that mine does, and maybe those of you out here that have built a Tridex, let me know if yours ever does this. It does not always give Z clearance before homing, like most of our printers are set up to do. And Eddie and I went through the config and couldn't really figure out why. So right now I'm just careful when I home that the tool heads aren't too close and aren't going to drag across the build surface. So let's go ahead and home and we'll see what this looks like. And I'll try to give a little better view here. So we're homing Y first. And then we get that shift in X, but then X home. So
Yep.
and the tool head gets out of the way. Now, one difference I made on my homing is because my probe here sticks out a little bit, I back off an extra 10 millimeters or so before homing X, but otherwise it's the same as your config. So you were going to say something?
Yeah, it looks like Steve had a comment. He has the same issue where he had to change his IDEX home macros to force Z equals 0. That's a really good point there. And that's, again, if you're lucky, you won't scratch your build plate, but then if you're not lucky, you might actually end up hitting the plate, which is not great. So that's definitely something, one of those things we need to get fixed. And things like this that are kind of annoyances or issues may be good to start tracking in GitHub under the Tridex repo. If you want to just open an issue ticket or something like that, then at least we can kind of track them and get the config updated as required.
That's a great idea. I'll do that. Or anybody else is experiencing this. If anybody wants to do this, do that.
Yep.
So it homes. If we want to change tool heads, I can go in here and I can go into macros and I can choose T1. It's going to swap spots, which is awesome. This is just fun. T0. And things move properly. What's that?
One of the interesting things when I first installed it is the defaults I got, I think were swapping the tool heads at like 500 millimeters a second. And so it was just like flying back and forth. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on?
About throwing the printer off the table.
Yep.
I think
there are some really good questions coming through. I wonder if we want to kind of get a print started or something. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And then while it's starting to print or something, I could go through some more questions.
Let's do that. Some of the first print I'm going to do is one I got off of Printables, and it is an IDEX print. It says it should take 15 or 20 minutes. So we'll slice that up. I actually copied my settings over to this computer this time.
Nice.
So we will be set to get that sliced. Let me load Filament first. So
Perfect.
Let me pull up.
And I'm sure you've already done like the calibrate extruder temperatures and all that type of stuff off.
Yep. So PID tuning has been done. I did the extrusion calibration, and it was dead on for both of them already. I didn't have to change it at all. And I did do a single color print and in single color with both tool heads, just to make sure things were moving right. And we discovered that little weird problem with or potential problem with the offsets. So that might be another issue to post.
Yep.
Why the second tool head homes at the same side as the first? Hey, that's a good question.
Yep. Yeah, that is a great question. So originally I had the tool heads homing to the outside on both sides. So if you think about that though, I don't know if you're familiar with tolerance loops, but essentially what happens if you're homing to the outside edges, then all of the different dimensions that could be slightly different add up. And so I had that happen. I was homing a lot, and I actually used one of the nozzle cameras essentially to try to figure out and quantify how accurate my homing was. And what I found is every single time I homed, I was just shifting enough, like zero point 0.1 or zero point 0.2 millimeters, that you could actually see it in the print, and it was really, really frustrating. I almost had to line the nozzle every single time. And so, what homing one tool head off the other does is it reduces that tolerance loop to almost nothing, because you're directly physically measuring the offset through the through the tool head, or through the hot end, through the tool head mount directly to the other one, and so there's very little variation in that. And we know from clicky and other Mac or other setups like that that end stops homing are really repeatable. I think in the like 0.0007 or 8 millimeter range, and so that's improved my offsets quite substantially. And it does look weird versus other setups, but it has improved the X accuracy a lot in my experience.
Awesome. Would it be possible to get both nozzle offsets by probing the Z end stop, then figuring out the difference and applying that when the tool heads switch?
Yes. So again, I think the nice thing about Tridex and the nice thing about the 3D printing community is that people who are smarter than me in a lot of those areas, once they get on board, they start creating awesome things. So like with the, is it the Double Dragon, the Dual V0? I think there are some members of the community who have started looking at homing both nozzles off the Z pin and then calculating offsets that way. It's just not something that I really have the skill set or time to look into. So I'm hoping that, again, other members of the community will kind of dive into that and start figuring that out. Because, yeah, directly measuring that Z offset at the start of a reprint would be really powerful. So.
Right. So what I've done here is just loaded up Filament, purged it. So,
Awesome.
so Filament's in, it's preheating. The bed is preheating. I've already, I don't know if you saw me wipe it off earlier. So I guess let's get it set up for a first print. Now the default setup here, this is, I think similar, you did similar to what I do on all of my printers, is I do a lot of manual prep for my prints. I do home, Z-tilt, home, then bed mesh, and then I start my print. I haven't automated all of that in a startup process. And that's how this is. So what we're gonna do is do all of that manually, and then all the print start does is heat up the nozzles and then do a purge line and print. So let's see.
Yep. And again, I don't have at home at this print start right now because I think those offsets, when you're trying to tune offsets, if you can keep the same error or the same homing values for like 5 different prints, that's helpful. So that you know that you're tuning one homing, and then if you rehome and it messes up again, you know something else is out. But at least you tuned it out one time. So
hey, Porty, where can I find?
And that's awesome. Electro Leon, he has a macro or something like that in the Tridex dev channel, and I'll admit I don't stay up to date with that channel as much as I would like. I know there's a thread in there for double tap, essentially 2 taps on Tridex, and a lot of great work. And I appreciate you guys for keeping up with that and having fun developing things. So
awesome. So I have Prusa Slicer open here.
Perfect.
And the changes I've made here is I set it to 2 extruders and did not check the single extruder multi-material for the first time. I set my bed size to, this should be 250. I don't know why that changed. So 250 by 240. So someone asked in chat if I use a Prusa bed here, and I use a Prusa build sheet, but it's still a 250 square build plate. The only reason I do that is because I really like the Prusa sheets. So I actually drilled extra holes in my bed for the locating tabs for the Prusa sheets.
Awesome.
So those stick out. I can remove those and I can put a full 250 by 250 plate on here if I needed to, but I have a 300 printer for that if I want.
Exactly.
I really like the Prusa sheets. So that's what I do across my 250 builds.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'd like to say with the, you know, so we have a build plate that is 250 millimeter wide, but we can only print 200 millimeters of that, the center
Yes.
200 essentially.
Yep.
And I know there's some way of specifying essentially gray areas where you can't print with both tool heads in Cura and probably Prusa Slicer. So if anyone knows how to do that or what settings are needed, and want to like describe how to do that, feel free to again put up an issue ticket or something, because I think that would be really helpful, so that you don't start printing something that's bigger than you can actually print, and then it errors out like 8 hours into a print or something like that. So if there's a way of doing that and you know how to do it, I'd love the help. So
yeah, me too. Thomas says he had to name my extruders T0 and T1 in the slicer. I'm not exactly sure where you would set that, and I don't think I've had to do that. So if we run into a problem, I'll come back to that. But
yep, I don't think I had to, but I'm not. Yeah. Most of the macros are, or I think Prusa Slicer will use T0 and T1, and then all the movement and switch stuff's in the config. So yep.
So Takuya says, can you upgrade to a Tridex with a stock 350 frame? So no extra extrusion. If so, how much build space would you lose? Can you?
So that's a great question. And this ties in with an earlier, that ties into an earlier question about what frame size to build plate should you use. And that's probably one of the harder things I've tried to figure out from what size frame do you spec. So right now we have a 350 by 250 frame, which means that you can't print the full build plate on dual material. But if you had a wider build plate, you could actually use, you know, if you're doing mirrored or duplication, you could have a wider build plate and get more print area for that. So it's always a trade-off of, do you want to use duplication or mirrored when that comes in the future, or do you really just care about dual material? So going back to your question on a stock 350 frame, exactly as Steve just pointed out, the nozzle wipers on the sides will interfere with your 350 build plate. I believe the maximum width of a build plate that'll fit is if you add 50 millimeters to the stock. So currently we have 350 wide.
We lost you for a second. Hopefully you're back here in a moment.
Just let me know when I'm back.
You're back now.
Perfect. Okay. So the widest build plate you can use is the X width of your frame, like 350 millimeter wide travel, and then subtract 50 millimeters from that. And that'll allow clearance for the...
Oh, we lost you. I'll let you know when you're back. You're back.
Okay. Do you
Let's
need
go
to
ahead
turn
and
off
lose
my
the video. Let's lose the video just to
make sure.
Yeah. So you'll have to, I think you have to turn off video on your side.
Oh, do I? Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. I did not. I should have thought about that. That would have made sense. There we go.
There. People will see when you're talking, because that'll still be on the screen.
Okay.
So. And it's buffering, I think. Go ahead and try to talk. Let's see.
Okay. We'll see how this goes. Okay.
I hear you.
Perfect. Okay. Short answer. If you have a 350 by 350 frame, the biggest build plate you can use and still clear the wipers is a 300 millimeters wide and a 350 millimeter deep frame. So.
Okay.
So you'd have to get a smaller build plate or cut yours down or something like that in order to use your 350 by 350 Trident frame. And it is only 50 millimeters on the sides. You can still use a 350 millimeter deep frame.
Yep. Okay.
Cool.
So extruder here, all these are basically my normal Clockwork 2 stealth. Let's go ahead and open, right?
It looks like it's buffering. Let's see here.
And that's my general connection there. Everybody's, I'm buffering too, because I just saw it go funky.
I think it's back now. It feels like we're in 1992 internet with the buffering.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure I've got some ISP issues going on, so I'll be contacting them today or tomorrow. So it is
Perfect. Okay, I think we're good.
Hopefully we're back. And this happened last stream as well. I don't think it happened during my weekday streams when I was building the Shapeoko. Here, I'm gonna open up. So we're gonna open both STLs at once, and it should ask me if this is a multi-material object.
Perfect.
So I'm gonna say yes, and now we have a thing here. So test extruder 1. So this one should be extruder 1. So we're gonna change this to extruder 1, and this one is extruder 2. And it says that in the file name, E2 and E1.
Nice.
And both things, I need to change my filament.
Yeah, it's funny. I originally thought before I got one dual material printer that I had to like somehow align the two exactly, but it's really nice when they automatically snap together.
And it's even nicer with the step file import in Prusa Slicer now. So you don't even have to worry about whether it aligns or not. It just does.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and slice this. Just general settings, and we're gonna see what happens, right?
Yep.
And it's telling me it looks like a logo or a sign. No, I'm not gonna change anything.
Do you wanna show the paper test for Z before you print, just to at least make sure someone doesn't start a test print without checking it and then destroying their build plate?
That's a good reminder. Now this doesn't seem to be showing both tools, because I have tool here. It should be showing tool, but why is it?
Check your printer settings and make sure that your extruders are set to a different color.
Oh, that's what's going on. Yep.
I think you're good.
Oh, because it's setting to the filament color. So let's say this was...
Yeah, at the very bottom. There we go. Yep.
This was extruder 2, and extruder 2 I have blue. So I'm going to throw that there just for fun. And then extruder 1, I'm going to throw red here. There we go.
Nice.
Yeah, that looks correct. And everything should send that over there. Okay. So that's at the printer, but first thing we wanted to do is go through a paper test. So the way I was doing this yesterday is basically I did a Z offset, a calibrate Z probe paper test on extruder 1, which sets a which sets the offset for that one. And then I just moved to Z0 with the second tool head and see how that compares, right? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I already did that, so let's home real quick. And let's just go home and home all. It should just to start. Everything's heated up now. It's been soaking for a bit. Oh, and I haven't done a Z tilt yet, so we're gonna do a Z tilt first. Yep, that's important as well. You should be completely trammed and homed before you do your Z offset calibrations.
Yep.
And nozzle at squishy filament temperature. So I have it at 160 now. I have it at 160 now for PLA. So now we're gonna do a Z tilt. And it's gonna go around and do that. Let's see. And I've had good luck. I mean, Z-tilt everything. It's been grabbing the probe just fine.
Nice.
Consistently, so.
Hopefully it doesn't adjust in the wrong direction like it did.
I know. I had one time, so Eddie's alluding to, I had one time where the rear stepper went up instead of down when it needed to. And then the next iteration, it just put it back, and then it finished it off just fine. just happened once. I don't know why. Okay.
Yeah, the one thing I would like to mention is that it is nice to have a Z-hop on your Trident or your Prusa slicer config right now, just so that your toolheads do Z-hop between they swap. It sounded like there's an issue with the configuration maybe right now where enabling the toolhead Z-hop in the config isn't quite working right. So
yeah, so I was doing separate prints just to see if both of them would go to the right spot, and the second toolhead was a millimeter over high, and I had set a 1 millimeter hop in the Tridex or the IDEX config.
Yep.
And I can show you that. For this particular configuration, there's an IDEX mode config file. And if we go in here, this sets things like your offset of your second toolhead to the first in X, Y, and Z. But it also has a Z-hop value here. And when I set that to 1, the second toolhead was printing, it looked like right at a millimeter above the plate for the first layer. So something in here isn't quite right.
Yep.
So
and to Turcon's credit, he sent me this like a year and a half ago, and I'm sure he wasn't planning for it to be this widespread, and there's probably bugs and stuff like that.
Well,
so again, we'll work through those, and if there's specific issues, we can get people in the community who understand macros a bit better to help out, get it tuned up.
As more of us are building these, it's going to bring more people are going to have incentive to work on them.
Yep, 100%.
So. Okay, and by the way, this printer has never been serialed. So this one will get serialed as a Tridex. It'll get a Trident serial, but it'll be its serial video will be in Tridex configuration.
Silly ID, yes. So the Tridex theoretically may in the future at some point be compatible with the tap, because there's the community members working on that. I haven't been following it as closely as I would have liked because of time constraints, but hopefully that will be an option sometime in the future. So
Eclipse, thank you for gifted memberships.
And yes, there should be a Tridex serial by itself. I think it would be nice to at least create a list on, I think there's a build showcase thread on the Doomcube Discord. So post there if you have any, if you're building one, because then it's just nice to see.
Are there more than 10 out there right now?
I think someone said 10 to 20 earlier, and I think that's probably accurate.
Darn. So. I won't have a single digit. Okay, so I've Z-tilt, or Z-tilt, ran Z-tilt, and now if I go to, and I'll switch over to another view here in a minute, but if I just go I like to go to Z1 first, just to make sure everything's good. And you might be able to see that through chat, but I just did a G0 Z1, and that's going to move the tool head to about a millimeter over let me get a little bit of filament there. Little piece of paper. It didn't touch the build plate. It looks to be about a millimeter over, so now I'll go ahead and go to Z0. And there's no resistance here. And I've found that. I'm finding, especially it's all open, I probably don't have a very consistent soak time and all that kind of stuff. So I found lots of variation between tests here, which is doubly difficult with an IDEX.
Exactly. And typically what I'll do here is, again, go to Z0, and then I'll bump down in 0.1 millimeter increments until I start to get some contact.
Yep.
And then I'll actually go all the way down to 0.01 millimeter steps up and down until it just barely starts grabbing. And then I found that that's really nice, because you really want that Z offset to not just be like 0.1 or 0.2, but something like 0.16 down to that hundredth of a millimeter.
Yeah.
And you really can't tell that from a test print. So it's important to try to use the paper as much as possible.
Yeah. So right now I've got an amount of friction here that I feel like I can compare on the other tool head. So and that's with a minus 0.05 offset now.
Nice.
So really enough to where if I was actually printing, it'd probably be kind of difficult to tell the difference between this and what it was. But I want to be able to feel it with the paper where I couldn't quite feel it before. And say, William, thanks for becoming a member. So now I'm going to switch tool heads, but because I have to set that Z hop 0 right now, I'm going to move Z up a couple of notches and then switch tool heads.
Yep.
So now we're going to go back to Z0 and see what so this is Z1 and this is Z0. Now if I, now it's not touching the same way, so I'm going to go with the same thing. Go down. And that is, it was about a 0.1 millimeter difference to get there.
Got it.
So.
And did you go down to the 0.01 increments? Sometimes you have to add that to mainsail to get the extra buttons, but.
There's a 0.005 option.
Oh, wow.
But this feels very similar to the other one right here.
Okay, awesome.
So that's, I mean, this is a beginning part, how you can get your Z offset difference, right?
Exactly. Yep.
I did not.
And as a reminder, the offset is a delta from the tool 0 to tool 1. So if your T1 needs to be dropped by 0.1, that means it is 0.1 higher than T0. So the offset would actually be, it always gets confusing.
The negative.
Sometimes I have to always go back in and just double check after you've changed the offset just to make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
So, yep.
If we go to machine and this IDEX mode config file, I had already set that it's 0.05 higher. I don't know based on this if I should go 0.1, but that's kind of the inconsistency of my early setup here. So what I think I'm going to do is just leave it, and we're going to do this test print, and I'm going to baby step through it and see what adjustments I need to make. It is typical to have a difference in the offset, Fizzy, because of variables in how things went together, how things were assembled.
Yep. Yeah, so your Z offset will always be slightly different. Hopefully, less than, say, 0.3 millimeters. Your Y offset, again, should be, say, less than 0.3 millimeters. If it's something like 2, then you probably have a GT2 belt stuck between the X carriage and the tool head. I had that happen once, and I was like, what is going on? This is really weird. My offset's so big.
Now, that's for Y, right? X could be
that's for Y. Yep.
Huge.
And then X could be whatever. Yep, because you really have to make sure you dial that in. So.
Yeah. And that's going to vary between builds based on mostly on this X end stop part and how the part, how it tightened down and how the switch tightened down and that.
Yep. Yeah, and the other thing is typically I'll try to get the nozzle touching the piece of paper at Y equals 0.1 because at least my sheets of paper are generally 0.1 millimeters thick. So I'm sure most of you guys know that, but it's a good thing to remember. So.
Now, someone mentioned random pieces of paper. I have several stacks of these little nice, perfect, not a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, care of the Keller Williams Real Estate Company, because they leave these on my porch about every few months.
That's funny.
So I have little pads here that end up being perfect for this.
Yep.
Okay, so let's start a print, huh?
Go for it. Yep.
Are we ready?
Let's do it.
So, and everything's homed and tilted. Oh, I did not mesh. So let me mesh real quick.
Okay. While it's doing that, I'll talk to DJ and Addy. This question: how consistent is the homing of the second tool head to the first one for you? Would using a tap-like optical sensor be more repeatable than an end stop? That's a good question. I haven't really thought about using an optical sensor. That may be something to look into. I think it'll be interesting once we get the TMV optical or camera-based alignment. If you could do a repeatability test with like 1,000 different homes to see, the variation. That's where once you start getting that data and you can see, from a statistical perspective how accurate the homing is. That's really where it gets exciting.
Yeah, and I bought the little camera. This guy. Anybody
I want to
sees.
figure out how to stick it behind the bed and like I think it might be possible to mount it out of the way so the bed can move up and down, but you still get the camera.
And Jordan, I didn't get a chance to print that lattice cube yet. I'm planning on it. I just haven't. I've gotten distracted in many projects lately.
And yes, Pulte or I don't know.
Poity.
TMV is being worked on for Clipper. There is a fork from Jubilee that they have been working on, and I think there's been more development in the last, say, 6 months that I really haven't been up to speed on. But I'm sure that, let's see here. I'm sure that someone else can provide more details on the status of that. So.
Now, using that TMV and the camera, you could automate this whole offset process. And using a macro, you could automate the Z offset process as well.
Exactly. Yep.
Because we were talking to Frank a little bit about that, and he seemed to think it would be pretty easy to set up a macro that would do the Z offset calibration for you.
Got it. And yeah, there's a guy that needs to adjust his X offset nearly every print. That's an interesting issue. I'd be curious to see how much variation there is. One thing, again, this is random, but one thing I did realize is I by accidentally put the left tool head hot end mount on the right, and it actually hits the front right idler, and I was trying to figure out why I had these massive offsets. But every time it would come to the front of the bed, it would crash.
Is that this little part? This little part that interferes?
Yep, exactly. Yep. Multi-MCU homing with the CAN setup. Yes, that is potentially an issue too, because there is more variability with the multi-MCU homing than there is, with both end stops directly going to the same micro. So it would be curious to see if he replaced or added an extra set of wires to each tool head to directly tie those X end stops to the main micro that is controlling the X motors, and see if that error goes away. And I'm curious if maybe it varies based on control board or micro or some code on the micro that maybe there's different latency or something. So
I want to fix something.
Maybe a fifth wire to the end stop to the main MCU. Yep, that's what I would try.
Oh shoot!
What do you want to fix?
I'm fixing my pinned post. I realized I only put the address for the filament giveaway there, and since I noticed we have about half of the entries to people that are watching.
Yep.
So I'm gonna fix that maybe. So remember the 3-ish hour mark. We will. There we go. We will be drawing for a spool of filament.
Nice.
Okay, we are ready to start a print. So I'm going to just start this. And this is going to go straight into printing once the filament or the nozzle heats up. So
perfect.
Now there's a lot of optimizations that can be done. And before I actually start this print, let's talk about what it's going to do. There's a lot of optimizations that can be done to automate some of this process. Right now, it's going to heat up both tool heads just because that's the easy thing to do. It's going to heat them up to full temperature. They're going to stay that way. There's ways you could automate where it cools down when it's docked, so it's not oozing as much.
Yep.
If we go to the slicer here and go to the start G code, it's just setting temperatures and then running a print start macro out of clipper. So if we go back, if we go to clipper and go to the printer config, and we scroll down here to the macros, we'll see that now you gave me some little conditional statements to improve this a little bit, but I haven't implemented them. So print start is simply doing a purge line for tool 0 and then switching to tool 1 and do a purge line, and then it's going to start printing. There's some conditional statements you can do here to say if one of the tool heads isn't above a certain temperature, don't do the purge line for it, which would be an indication that we're not printing with both tool heads. But
that would get really nice, because then you could easily do a single color or dual tool head print without having to keep the other one running all the time. So
these are super rudimentary, but lots of development can be done on here, and I'm sure there's
100%.
folks that have already set these up to be much more automated and stuff. So I'm just going to hit print, and we're going to go for it.
Go for it.
So now it has set the tool head temperatures. Yep. So tool head temperatures have been set. And it is oozing because it's going all the way, which means this purge line is really important.
Yep.
I'm gonna find where my glasses are so I can get a good view of this. One Who Schemes, thanks for becoming a member. And I'll try to get a better camera setup here going after this. But it's going to do a purge line here for tool 0. And then it's going to dock, and then it's coming in for a purge line with tool 1. And things are looking pretty good.
I'm excited to see it.
So now it's going to throw tool 1 back. Okay. And of course, it's got to get through all of its, since it oozes when it's over there in its docked position. I think first layer is a little high right now, but we're going to just let it go.
Yep. That is one other optimization right now. If you apply a Z offset to the print, it actually won't accept it, because whenever it switches back to T0, it automatically sets all the offsets to 0. So again, there can be a relative.
If I baby step on the screen here, it's not going to.
It'll apply to this toolhead print right now, but then when it switches back and forth, it'll
be too high for the next level.
Yep.
I see. This isn't too bad. I might lose some details on this first layer, but really the second layer is what we're concerned about, just to get our X and Y offsets correct.
Yep.
If you use a skirt, then you don't need a purge line. Yeah, you can set the volume, because in Prusa Slasher, you can set a minimum volumetric or volume of filament to purge on skirts, which works pretty well.
Yeah, the reason I have mine at the front is one, making sure that both tool heads are fully primed, and then if there's any things hanging off that the wipers didn't grab, if it sticks in the skirt, then it might end up in the print as well. But the purge should knock that off pretty nicely. So that's kind of why I did it that way. And it's also nice if you can avoid having a skirt, then it's just easier to. You have a lot of long pieces of filament that you can throw away off the front of the bed instead of having to reach in and touch the print bed as much.
I wonder if it would be nice to have in just the T0 and T1 macros a conditional, if the tool head is above a certain temperature, upon change, do a little purge before it comes off the.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. So the original tool change macro, had the print cooling fan actually stop on the idle tool head. And you'd think that's great, but in my experience, the best way I had any like ooze or anything like that knocked off is if I actually kind of solidified the ooze while it was parked, and then when it swung over the wiper, instead of a stringy, mess trying to wipe it off, it was actually more of a hard piece of plastic that kind of fell naturally. And so there's definitely optimizations there. The other thing that I don't think your configuration has that I have on, or I had in the past on my printer, was whenever it would tool change, it would actually wipe. It wouldn't just go over the wipers once. It would actually go back and forth to get some more action, I guess, to knock anything on there off. So there's a lot of different options. The other thing would be have a hole and be able to purge straight down through, and then it would fall in the bottom of the area there. So.
And it might not be a terrible idea for a quick fix to enable a very small purge tower, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think the other thing that's interesting that I struggled with, because I was trying to extrude a little bit of filament, essentially when it was parked, but then you're activating different extruders and things like that, and I didn't take enough time to figure out the timing, because if you do it after the other tool head actually activates, then it's not actually going to extrude or it's going to extrude on the wrong extruder. So, yep. Let's see. Okay, you're still there. Good.
Yeah.
It was really quiet for a second.
I was mesmerized by a print.
Yep.
So the first layer is high. I need to set my overall offset a little lower. I'll probably drop it by maybe
That's a key point.
0.1.
So just everyone listening, if your T0 tool head is high, then you adjust your Z end stop position.
Mm-hmm.
If your T1 is high, but your T0 is fine, then you adjust your offset. And there's like a matrix of different options there, depending on which one's high and which one's low. You might have to change the offset, the tool head offset in IDEX mode as well.
It's printing.
And I guess this one will have a tool change right on that first layer, which is always nice.
Right. So this is a remix. So I'll post a link here in a bit to where I grabbed this, and maybe I'll look for it while it's printing. I grabbed this off of Printables, and it's a remix of an IDEX calibration print, but it adds this extra part over there in the upper right that is intended to be first layer comparison between the two tool heads.
Sense. Yep.
So
that's nice.
Otherwise, it would just print tool head 0 for the base, and then bring in tool head 1 for the second layer, just to compare the X and Y offsets. So I'll post a link here. All I did is search for IDEX on Printables.
It's back. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's. I will be contacting my provider because I'm pretty sure it's a provider issue at this point. I'm testing a little lower than I usually do. So I don't know if it's weather related. It could they could have some issue from moisture, ingress or something somewhere.
Yep.
So
yeah, so while we're printing here, there was a question a little bit back from Don't Knock It about knowing this isn't your regular job. Has the Voron team talked about developing a standard Tridex bomb and the manual, or is that in the hands of the community? So that is a really good question. The tricky part with Tridex right now is...
Oh, I lost you.
Back. So
now you're back.
Okay, great.
The tricky part with Tridex.
Yeah. So the tricky part with Tridex is that depending on if you want dual material prints or if you want future mirrored and duplication support, your frame size and build plate size is going to be different. For this basic 350 by 250 frame like Steve has here, I do have a Tridex bomb, that isn't quite as refined as what is on the Voron website, but it's very similar. It should have almost exactly the same thing with sourcing guide and everything like that. And then the manual, again, I did start the manual, but I don't think I'm going to finish it because just of the time constraints. But if someone from the community wanted to work on that and do that, then that would be fantastic. So
Something interesting one, that print you are doing, the plus direction and minus direction and adjustment is reversed. Interesting. Yeah, I've got some it's not sticking, but I'm going to leave it. I think it's going to be okay for the purposes of the first round of this test.
got it. Yep.
It's not catastrophically failed yet. It's just not great.
Yep.
There is a blob back there, but it's not sticking.
Yep.
Fingers
Yeah, I love
crossed.
these test prints that have like the Moai statue print. I love again because it has details on the first layer that are pretty easy to tell which directions you need to shift. The dual color test prints like that require you to print for 15 minutes before you even understand where the second tool head is. It's not great. So, yeah, it does look pretty high.
Yeah. Definitely having some purging issues. It's oozing enough when it's over at the sides that it's taken a while before it starts printing back at the main print.
Yeah, and that is interesting. Also, I typically have printed with ABS more than PLA. I get or at least my impression is that PLA is a little bit more oozy and maybe like gummy than ABS, but I'm not sure if that's the case or not.
Yeah.
So there may be some different optimizations for PLA that I haven't really played around with.
Yeah. This is, I mean, just comparing the first layer, I think the biggest problem with the blue is that there was a large blob that was pulling things up. But otherwise, they look very similar in squish, or lack of squish in this case. Just with my glasses looking at it.
Does it retract when it parks? I think there is.
In the slicer, I think there's a 10 millimeter retract, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, there's definitely, again, that could be fairly easily added to the tool change macro. I'm not sure if one is in there now. Let's see here.
So now it's putting on the calibration marks.
Okay. And yes, you could apply an offset temperature for standby, but I just haven't really done that much.
I'm going to mute my other computer 'cause I'm getting notifications. The printer is shaking up a decent amount. That's true.
Yep, it definitely does. Like, even though I don't generally recommend doing PR builds, in this case, for if you're kind of on the cutting edge with Tridex, it does improve a lot to do that. I need to check in on that PR and see what the status is and see where the general direction is going.
For the clipper?
For fixing the input shaper for Tridex.
We got a 2-color print here.
Yep.
I don't know that it has a 10 millimeter retract, Chris. I thought I saw somewhere, but I think you're right. It probably doesn't. The other thing we were talking about when we were chatting yesterday is the cool things we'll be able to do with the stealth burner LEDs.
Yep.
Okay, it finished.
Nice.
Doesn't look pretty, but it finished. Let's see what we got here.
I just realized that I was no longer live on your stream, so I was like a few minutes behind. I'm like, it finished already. Like,
Oh,
that's funny.
okay. So we printed this. And when we're looking at comparing them, it is in 0.1 millimeter increments. So if it lined up here on the bottom, there's no adjustment needed. And the further up you go, whichever one lines up plus or minus, and I'm being told it's reversed, is what we should be looking at. So let me see. Maybe we can do this. Whoop.
Yeah, Electrolean set input shaper G code does not work.
There we go.
There's something with the kinematics that's broken with at least with the current implementation from a while ago. Maybe they fixed it since. But.
So I am quite off in X, which we knew.
Yep.
I'm at least a millimeter off. And
wants to focus on that Bowden tube. There we go.
Come on.
Nice.
I
wonder how high off the bed you are, or
this is about as close as I can get.
Got it.
We're at least a millimeter off. I'd probably go like 1.1 millimeters off is what I would try for the first one. And then in Y, as expected, I think we're pretty much dead on.
Okay, nice.
So it is, we need to add 1.1 millimeters to our X offset, I believe. Because the blue, it's shifted that way. So we need to add, right?
So which filament is which tool head?
Blue is the dual carriage, is T1.
Got it. Yep.
So I think we need to add 1.1 millimeters to the...
You'd maybe consider even just shifting the X end stop position if you wanted, or you could add it to the off. It doesn't really matter either way.
Let's do the offset, because if I change the X ends, well, do I have to do...
yeah, then it's going to change other stuff too. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if we come back here and go to this and go to machine and go to IDEX mode, our X offset should be about 1.1 now, right?
Yep.
And then we can save and restart.
Did you change the Z offset at all?
It's up a little bit. We're okay. Oh, I didn't change the Z offset, but I'd like to change just my general offset before I really compare. So I'm just going to do that right here. So thanks for the reminder. I'm going to go down. I think I'm going to go down 0.1, and I'm just going to save that to end stop. Save the config. So that'll restart again. Now I'm going to clean off my print here. That came off nice and clean.
Nice.
And then we will try this again. Let me get it heated back up so we don't lose that soak.
Okay, great.
Go ahead.
Nope, I was just watching what you were doing, and yep, you're good. I was behind where you're at.
So I've got some ooze. I'm gonna pull the tool head forward and clean this ooze out. So let me get those up to temperature. These Revos cool down quick. They're already down under 60.
Nice.
Let's get those heated back up. So they are far enough above the build plate right now that I'm not worried about them running into anything when I home next.
Sounds good.
So what would the extra cost of this Tridex roughly be compared to a normal Trident?
Yep. That's a great question. I think, let me actually pull up, while you're getting that print started, I'll pull up the numbers I had before.
And I'm also going to go into the slicer and see about enabling a purge tower here for this next try. So I think, where do we go?
I haven't historically had to.
But with ABS, I'm definitely having purge issues here.
Got it. Okay.
Multiple extruders, and I think I can enable a white tower here. And I don't want to wipe a lot. I think in filament settings, we set the minimum purge on white tower. I don't think we need much. I'm going to go like minimal. And let's just see what happens. We go platter. Currently supports, what does that say? The white tower currently supports a non-soluble supports only. They are printed with the current extruder without triggering a tool change. Both supports material extruder and supports material interface extruder needs to be set to 0. I don't know what that means.
We'll see. I guess we'll find out.
Well, it says both prime all printing extruders. White tower. Is it over here? Ooze prevent instead of white tower. Well, I'm afraid that it's not going to make a proper ooze shield at that point because it's printing in air until it finishes priming the
Yeah, just try the white tower and see. Yeah, just.
But I'm trying to figure out how to. It doesn't.
How to set the size, or.
Well, it says invalid data. It's giving me that error that I have something set that's not working. So last time gave us a usable test. Let's just do it again.
Okay, sounds good. Yep.
So everything is warmed up. So we're gonna go through and we'll just do our homing and all the things. So home. Oh, print settings. You have extruder 1 selected for supports. Okay, thanks, Sir Edward. I'll check that while this is printing. So I think we got a usable test last time.
Yep, it should be a lot. It should be a good bit better this time. So
yeah.
There was a question about the cost, and so I did pull up on the Tridex GitHub page. There is a Trident versus Tridex cost delta. So it doesn't only have the quantities you need for each one. So it's essentially the sourcing guide for a Trident, and then the corresponding amount of parts you need for a Tridex. And at least from these numbers, Trident cost was $12.06 US without any shipping or anything like that. The Tridex was $15.21 for a cost increase of $3.15. Now, I would probably just say closer to $500 because if you buy any extras, or if you're buying any, if you're going to buy a frame and then buying extra extrusions to convert it, things like that, costs always increase. So I would say somewhere in the like $2,000 range probably would be a good estimate.
Can you type something in chat, Eddie?
Sure.
I'm going to make you a moderator so you can post a link to that.
Okay. Cool.
Add moderator. So now you should be able to post a link to that. Someone was asking for it.
Okay.
Okay. So that is done. Now let me bed mesh it. Did that come up? There we go. Awesome. So Michael, my build here was originally a 250 build Trident. And this is the first Trident I built on stream. The first stream series that I did on YouTube. was a little over a year ago, last September. And at the same time, I ended up with a 350 frame as well in the same orange extrusions. So what I did is I combined those. I took the proper extrusions from the 350 frame. So now I have a 350 wide by 250 deep. Are you still there, Eddie?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
I'm reading through chat, trying to see if there's any other
Yeah, thank you.
questions.
I appreciate that. This is fun. This is working out really well. I hope everybody watching is having fun. It sounds like it.
Yeah, Jeff Montgomery about conversions or Tridex upgrade kits. It's really tricky trying to figure out what the proper path is. If you buy a Trident kit and then buy everything else you need to upgrade to, you know, essentially the configuration Steve has, you're probably looking at $600 or $500 or more dollars for the extra parts. If you do a full Tridex kit from the ground up, you know, it would be a little bit cheaper. It's tricky. I don't know. Again, since this isn't officially released, it's kind of an advanced printer. It's hard to know if it's worth doing anything with. But right now, I would just recommend, you know, doing something like Steve did and buying a 350 and 250 frame, or else, you know, buying parts from Misumi or something else. So.
Yeah, and these are the newest V0 spec steppers in the rear, right? So they're commonly available.
Yep.
Commonly available. Oop, keep your fingers out of the way when it homes. I almost got myself pinched.
Yeah, and that was one of the biggest goals with this, was to try to keep as much the same as possible. And that's, you know, the NEMA 14 motors had to happen. But other than that, there's very little that is unique in the BOM list. I know, like the M5x50 bolts, you know, there's a few extra little things that weren't included, but the CAN driver boards, the extra MGN12 rail with 2 carriages, things like that. But there's really not much unique here, which is great, because you can build it from your kind of Voron hardware kit. So.
Right. Okay, it's preheating. Oh, there it goes. So we should get a purge line here. So have you found when it docks over here, if the silicone is actually pushing into the nozzle, does it help with ooze?
So that's one area where, you know, I changed the nozzle wipers. So my previous setup was literally a kitchen spatula with kind of a triangular shaped silicone wiper off the side of a kitchen spatula, and that was pretty stiff, and it worked really well. But of course, you know, you're not going to go buy the same kitchen spatula around the world, so I was trying to find something a bit more generic. So I haven't really dialed in the blocker, essentially, with kind of burying the nozzle in the silicone block to see if that helps. So there's a lot of optimization, and you know, that the community can do there. The nice thing about those parts is they can be pulled off the printer and modified and updated with it really taking nothing else apart. So that's kind of why I'm comfortable saying you can build one of these, you know, using the available BOM, because those are just some screws and, you know, some raw material for the silicone and just some printed parts. So
Internet killed the TV. Thanks for becoming a member. Any chance you could show the toolhead CAN wire routing? Use anything extra inside the cables to make them stiffer and not sag? I have not used anything stiffer. So these are the cables that came with the SB2040s I'm using, which are from Mello. And they have, I think it was 18 gauge power wires and probably 22 or 24, maybe even 26 gauge CAN wires. I have only 4 millimeter sleeving on there, which makes it kind of tight and kind of stiffens it up a little bit. So far, they seem to be hanging out pretty well.
I like the RTV molded nozzle scrubbers idea from Bill Brothers. And I think the windshield wiper blade, just like Nardone mentioned, would probably melt with the heat.
Yeah, I was going to say temperature would be a concern. I was looking at those last night, actually, and I was wondering if some of these we could maybe cut a little V and put them at even higher, so they
Yeah,
if you
and it is,
position a
and
V right.
do you have pictures of the spatula? I probably threw it out, but yeah, it was just like a generic red, spatula. The interesting thing is the height of that wiper and the stiffness really kind of is important as far as how well it wipes stuff off. If it's too high, it kind of just hits the nozzle but doesn't really wipe. So it's tricky.
My 0.1 millimeter change in Z offset was too much. So
Now it's smushed in.
It's smushed, but that's okay. Better to be
I wonder if there
smushed.
was something with the Z pin, maybe it heated up or something like that. I don't know. Who knows? So I did originally try the toothbrush comment from Danny. I did originally try the brass brushes that you typically see. The issue with that is there is a really big gap between each of the bristles, and so trying to make sure that everything lined up and you actually got stuff off of the nozzle was a little bit difficult. So
yeah.
Are IDEX printers more trouble than they're worth? I would say no, because really, if you need one, you need one, and you need one. If you don't need one, then they're probably more trouble. So the one thing I didn't talk about much yet is really the use case for, if you're a hobbyist, if you want to print things off of Thingiverse, if you're designing parts to be 3D printed, unless you really want dual color, which you could probably do with an ERCF or a splitter just as easily, there is no real reason to have an IDEX. It is really only, in my mind, if you're an engineer or in prototyping space, something like that, where you need to use soluble supports or breakaway support for prototyping an injection molded part. That is the place where you absolutely need a dual tool head printer. And so again, since originally this has been in the works for a few years, the reason I wanted it was to prototype parts for work, and there's nothing you can really do with single material prints for that. So
yeah, and I mean the problem with a splitter setup when you're doing multi-material is contamination, cross-contamination between them. And
yeah, and I had originally started out with I actually bought a Palette 2 Pro back when, I forget when that was. That was like probably 2019, because I was trying to start printing parts, injection molded parts, and the splices were one failure point. But again, I even with like perfect parts that look great, there was just enough cross-contamination. Like if you think about an injection molded part, the walls are super thin, so layer adhesion is really, really critical. It's not like the 3D printed part where your layer to layer contact area is massive. And so I was getting just enough contamination between the two parts that an ABS part would print great. It would be really strong. ABS plus HIPS part would just kind of crumble apart in my hands. And so that was really, again, the reason why I started down this path, was because the cross contamination with a single nozzle with two materials.
Now, Kyle was asking about why I'm not adjusting Z right now. And the reason is because part of the macros for changing tool heads re-zero Z. So it invalidates any micro stepping that you do on mid-print. This is also going to let me compare if the second tool head squishes about as much, I know I'm in the ballpark between the two. If I adjust it, it's going to reset when that other tool head comes in and I won't be able to compare them.
Yep. And I'm really hoping someone with more macro experience can figure out how to make those a relative adjustment instead of an absolute adjustment, so that we can do a live adjust Z with this print. Because that is a major pain if you can't do that. So
yeah. And then I think someone else is asking the question again about input shaping. And in the current Clipper release, it's not supported in IDEX. But there is a fork where it is. I'm just not running that fork yet.
Yep. And then can Tridex be made with a larger bed? As I mentioned before, the stiffness of the belts essentially is half of what you would have for a comparable sized frame Trident. And so, you can theoretically do a larger bed, but you're going to run into kind of ringing issues down the road. So my proposal would be, if you're willing to print at a fairly slow speed, increase the size of the build plate, but just realize that there may be limitations there. So don't expect to be printing at light speed with 2 tool heads and a really big printer.
So my second tool head is higher than the first. This layer looks about perfect.
Okay.
So
yeah, so here's one of those things where you adjust your so like let's say you need to increase your red tool head 0 by 0.05 millimeters or something like that. You'll adjust your Z end stop position by that 0.05 millimeters, but then you will also adjust your IDEX offset by the opposite 0.05, so that you keep the same height for T1, but then you adjust your T0.
Yeah. Yeah, because right now, if this is perfect, whatever my offset is, and I think it's 0.05 on Z, is what I want my Z, the other one to be. So I should be able to change this. I should be able to turn this back to something. Anyway, that's a mind twister once you get into it.
I always get twisted around with a single tool head and trying to figure out if I need to add or subtract to the Z end stop, and now it's just twice as crazy. So
yeah, and if I look at this, just that first layer, I may still be off a little bit in the X direction. So we'll see what the little hash marks say.
Yeah, it would be surprising if your first adjustment got it on the spot on.
Yeah. Well, and it was outside of the range of the test. So I was making a guess.
Right,
because the test only goes up to 1 millimeter of offset. So what we'll do here, and we're at about the 2-hour mark here, Eddie. So it's up to you.
Okay.
When you're ready, but we'll continue. Maybe do this test, and then we'll move over into. I got to do a Moai for the first print, since that's your favorite.
Yes.
Your favorite print. So I have the files already.
I'm definitely sticking around until you get that started, because again, I like that because you get a lot faster feedback than even this. But this gives you some more resolution too. So
yeah. So I'll see how this is, and then we'll make a tweak, and then maybe we'll go straight into the Moai.
Perfect.
Why not use a brass brush for nozzle wiping? The distance between bristles on that make it difficult to line up, right?
Yep.
And even when you use a brass brush for nozzle cleaning at like the back of the bed, you really need to move the nozzle around it. And in this case, you only have one axis. It's in line. There's no movement in Y.
Yep.
You only have X to work with. So even if it works well once, eventually those brass brushes move out of the way. Get that ooze out of there.
I'm trying to look through and figure out the PR. I'm trying to find the PR or issue ticket where Dimitri had added input shaping support for Tridex. I'm trying to figure out where that ended up going.
This is really, really close. I might have actually gone just a little bit. It might have been exactly 1 millimeter more.
Mm-hmm. This is really strange. I can't find the.
No, it needs a little more actually. If I'm interpreting it right, it needs just a little more. Maybe 1.3 looks like it would line up. I'll change that to 1.3 and then we're going to do a MOI.
Sweet.
The amount of material would clog up the brush in a few layers. Well, yeah, that's true. Part of this is it moves out of the way, right?
Yeah, and that's another advantage about the Trident is that you have a huge amount of area underneath the build plate for all of the crap from ooze to fall off on. So.
Yeah, this is the wiper assembly here, right underneath the inactive tool head crystal. Here we go. That is much, much, much better. Even if we don't get a great focus here, you can see that. It looks like maybe the third one over is the best line, which would mean I'm going to change that to 1.3 and then we're going to run with it. Because that would be a 0.2 additional change.
Perfect.
So, and then X looks like it lines up. So as it should. Would moving the brushes closer to the bed so that it goes over the full brush when it swaps help?
Yeah, you could use some of the extra space to have a wider brass brush. So that is, that is a possibility.
Awesome. Let me get this back to warmed up. We're gonna go in here and we're gonna go to machine and IDEX mode. And we're gonna change this to 1.3 and save and restart. Oh, yep, we got to change our Z a little bit. So I'm going to raise that up. Go back here and we're going to raise I'm just going to go up 0.05. And I know we got a bunch of saves and restarts here. I did a poor choice in sequence of operations here.
So you did adjust the Z pin or Z end stop and adjust the other one?
I'm adjusting the other one now.
Got it.
So I think this would be, I think it is a little higher. So we want to go minus 0.05 here at this point, right?
Correct. You would do the exact opposite of the change.
Okay, save and restart. I think that's where we want to be. And if it's not...
Or is it minus 0.5 or...
It's higher that T1 is higher than T0.
Yeah, so you raised T0, so you need to drop T1. Okay, yep.
Yeah.
Got it. And yes, who was it that said... Let's see here. Someone said that they found the PR, or the pull request. Yeah, Linus. Yeah. So on the second page of the Clipper pull request, there is a ticket in there with details for the input shaping dual carriage for IDEX. So that's what I'm running today on my printer.
And my silicone wipers here are not quite where they probably should be. So
someone was mentioning that he or she, I'm not sure, has done a lot of testing with different wiper shapes and had mentioned that an RTV triangular shape was the best he was able to find. And that actually, like a triangular
is in like the shape of the nozzle?
The shape of the tip. So I think that ends up giving you, you impart a little bit more energy into the ooze. So it like flicks off more, I think. So I think that's good. But I don't know how you'd get something like that off the shelf unless you can buy like a triangular shaped silicon. So.
Okay. So, Michael, I believe my offset was wrong to begin with. So you said, should the offset not be 0 and not minus 0.05? There is a difference between them. If I set it to 0, then it's still going to be too high. Because when I was squishing too much on tool 0, tool 1 was perfect. If I changed, which means there's should be about a 0.05-ish, maybe it's 0.1 millimeter. I might find out here in this test print. But I think what I did is at least close to what it should be. I'm gonna bring in the Moai. And we're just gonna leave the colors the way they come. Now, I wanna try this purge tower again. And where was the setting for supports? Purge or whatever it was. What was that setting someone was talking about? For the white tower, enabling the white tower. I forget. And then
oh yeah, your it would probably be in print settings, I think, where it says what extruders you use for supports. I'm not sure what the correct settings are there.
Where was that? Supports, stealth mode. Yeah, let's see what the white tower currently supports. Here's the error. The white tower currently supports the non-soluble supports only.
It looks like Michael is saying that you raised T0 by 0.05 but lowered T1 by 0.1. I'm not sure. I wasn't paying close attention because I'm off of versus where your stream's at. But
yeah, I know where you're going there, Kyle. I think we'll see. I'm learning too. So the best way for me to actually see what the results of my change were. Yep. Where was the supports?
If you go to, let me see here. Let me pull up Pressure Slicer.
Is anybody?
If I have Pressure Slicer on this computer.
I don't need any ramming or anything like that. Is that going to? Yes.
Yeah, I think Michael's right. I
think it needs to be 0. I just zero it out.
0. Yeah, just zero it out.
Okay. And I'm gonna just turn off this white tower because I'm spending too much time on this.
Figure it out later. Yep.
Let's just turn that off. I'll figure it out later. It's in the print settings. Where in the print settings? I didn't see it. Maybe I'll look here again. Extruder 1. Extruder 2. Don't see.
Maybe under support
print
material.
Under extruders.
Yeah, I think it says in print settings, it says there's a list of what extruders you use for which type of material, and maybe you need to set supports
print
to
settings,
extruder
multiple
2.
Extruder. I don't see a multiple extruder option here. I've got extruder 1 and extruder 2.
They're at the very
print settings.
Yeah.
Print settings, not printer settings.
Correct. Yep.
Multiple extruder. Oh, I see.
So maybe if you set it to, let's see here.
Support material interface extruder. All of these are set to 1.
Yeah, maybe if you set 1 to 2, I'm not sure.
Sorry, I was confused. Print settings, not printer settings. Got it.
Yeah, so maybe if you set the solid or the support material and to 2, maybe.
But I don't want it to do that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure either. So.
I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to learn about that later, and then I'll pass on the information. So we're just going to slice this as it is. Let's see what this is going to look like. We're going to get a Spider-Man Moai. Oh, set them all to 0. That's what they're saying. Set them all to 0.
We just start this. The nice thing of the Moai, but about the Moai print is that the first layer takes like 60 seconds, so you should know pretty quickly how far off you are.
That's true. Oops, I didn't want that. Cancel. I'm going to set them all to 0 for the next print.
Got it.
I'll set them all to 0, but I'm also going to go back here and go with your guys' suggestion and and change this to 0. And save and restart. Let's see what happens. 160, 60, 70. Okay. Spider Moai. Let's go.
Perfect.
Everything's up. Everything's out of the way. So let's go here and go through the process. It's just a warning if you preview it. See if it shows correctly. I'll play around with the white tower, and we might do that after Eddie takes off. Spend a little time looking at that, but let's get this going and see how it looks. Okay, that's done. Now it's wrong. Some of this is such a brain twister.
Yeah, it is.
And if you
really
think
is.
about it too long, you change your mind about 4 times.
Yep.
So with these quick prints, sometimes it's easier to just try it.
Yep.
Confirm what's going on. So now it's at 0. Everything's zeroed. Now I know which way to go on the next one. If I'm getting a good first layer, then it's going to help simplify the equation.
That would be really nice if everything was 0.
Okay. And this is definitely twice the calibration, twice the configuration for a system like this.
Yep.
I wouldn't make this your only printer.
No, not at all. Yeah, the nice thing, there is a lot more calibration. The nice thing is from a print reliability standpoint with the like the Y splitter or a palette, I was always worried about some switch not working correctly or there some macro change. The nice thing here is like your variables essentially are just the offsets, and if you can get those reliably the same, then it's not like you're picking up a tool or dropping it off or trying to make sure it doesn't clog or something like that, which is really nice. That was the part that always tricked me with the Y splitter.
Yep.
Making sure the nozzle or the filament tips were shaped correctly and not clogging or.
Says, couldn't a macro be made to touch each tool head off? Yes, we could do there. It could be done, and it may have been done. I just haven't. I'm sure somebody's done that.
If there's something working for that, Steve said he was going to try to update the clicky macros to the new version, because right now it's using really old versions of the clicky macros. And once that's done, if we have a way to touch both nozzles off the Z pin, then that's probably a great thing to look at next.
So I guess the message, there's several people watching here who have IDEX machines and Tridex machines. If you've done something, bring it up again, because going back and searching for something in Discord, things get missed.
Yep. So. And I think if you have something really put together that you think would be like a nice feature add or a macro update or something like that, again, whether something's broken or you have a feature add, just open an issue ticket. We can track it. So, and Napin, ironic that they don't make it your only printer when my Trident IDEX is the only working printer at the moment. I will say that is also the case for me. My only large printer, other than my V0, is my Trident or my Tridex right now. So it's my workhorse at the moment. My Trident and my V2.4 are actually in pieces at the moment.
And someone says, sorry to ask, but can the Tridex be built with Z belts? Sure.
Yes.
I don't know.
Maybe.
The idlers might have a problem.
Yeah,
the front idlers. Just looking at the Z assembly, it's Trident. There's nothing different about Z on Tridex. It's the exact same as a Trident, but those front idlers might get in the way. I haven't looked real close at the belted Z Trident options out there because I like the Trident as it is. As I should.
Yeah, I think I really like lead screws, especially with the features that Steve added to make sure that lead screw wobble doesn't get translated into print. My personal opinion is belts. If you've looked at some of the work that I think Wapping Pochard has done, showing that the belts kind of have a hysteresis, or they're not as rigid and predictable as a lead screw is. So again, my personal preference, it's better to have it how it is. But add info to the forum instead of Discord. That's another option. I should go to the forum more, but yeah, again, these days I don't have a lot of time to look into things. But yeah, that's also another option to talk about things.
I think I'm gonna have to swap out these PTFE tubes too.
Are they pretty restrictive?
Yeah, and I don't know why, because there's no pinch points. I just grabbed some off the shelf. I may have grabbed something kind of crappy.
Yep. Yeah, I've grabbed the ones with like a lot of friction in them before, and I'm like, wait, I need to swap that.
Yeah, so in general, you want to go PTFE and not FEP.
Got it.
So
Okay.
FEP, if you find and want to buy FEP tubing, it has more friction than PTFE.
Got it. Stefan, still want to build one, but I'm already having a hard time with the ERCF. Tridex looks like a real challenge. I don't know. It's two different difficulties. I mean, an ERCF has a lot of. I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's other difficulties with ERCF. With, again, like I mentioned before, with the nozzle splitter. Making sure your filament tips are good and not clogging, and there's a lot of macros there too. So, I mean, from a structural perspective, building this shouldn't be all that much more difficult than building a Trident. And you still have the calibration stuff, so it's, yeah.
This is really, really, really close, if not dead on. Just looking at it. And my my Z offset looks really, really close too.
Nice.
Now it might be, I think I should have done minus 0.05 looking at it.
Yep.
Because there is a little more.
The other thing with that print is there's not a lot of large surfaces to determine like how much you're extruding, so it might be a little bit hard to see.
Sorry, but I just hate lead screws. I don't get, I mean, what is it about lead screws that you hate? Is that traditionally you hear about lead screws introducing Z artifacts? Well, if you can resolve that, then what is there to hate about lead screws? It's a very reliable, low maintenance, simple solution.
Yep. The robustness and reliability. I don't have to worry about if a lead screw is tensioned correctly, or if there's ringing or something else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Golden Jaguar with the V1.8. I'm glad you like it. I had a lot of fun with that printer. So.
Mm-hmm. I was going to build a 1.8 as part of 1.9 development, but it just went straight into 1.9/Trident.
Yep.
So I never actually built a 1.8. This is really, really close. I don't know. No, that's not gonna. I don't think we're gonna get any peaks at. Yeah, we're not gonna get a good enough peak.
Music. Big advantage of the Trident is you can print twice as fast, at least if you print two of the same parts. Again, the duplication mode isn't supported at the moment. And then, as I mentioned earlier, your acceleration is kind of limited based on the belt stiffness for X being essentially half of what it is for a standard Core XY printer. And so, again, this isn't really a great printer for really fast speed, but if you need a insulated enclosure and ABS Plus supports. I don't know if there's a much better printer at this price point to get that done. I'm sure there's other alternatives. Like granted, I haven't looked at the Trident IDEX much, so I need to look at that.
It just ejected a blob of filament here.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely purging and nozzle ooze control is such a key here.
Yep, you'll get a lot of whiskers on the thing, and so again, these wipers are less effective than the triangular shaped kitchen spatula that I had before.
Okay.
So there's definitely room for improvement. And again, community, if you guys have worked on something and have a design that you think is better, like please share, because yeah, this is one area where there's still work to do. So.
But we're doing an actual non-calibration dual color print. It's awesome.
Yep.
Is it finished? It basically it's built. It's built. It's basically finished. That's a blue blob T1 is picked up, going to the pause area. Yep. I'll just leave that blue blob there. Let's see if it gets a neighbor. See if it gets a neighbor on the next one.
Yep.
Lead screws can cause wobble and the cost factor.
Thomas with I build the Doom Tridex with 4040 profiles and run 10K accelerations. That's awesome.
Awesome.
What are you using, the input shaper PR, or is that just on mainline clipper? An additional wiper right on the edge of the bed. That would be really interesting. Yeah, as an extra way to just make sure to get
flick things out of the way.
Yeah, flick things off the way. Yep. Now that you are tuning the alignment of the two nodules, how does it hold up after a few print head dismounts? So, since we're talking about fraction, like hundredths of a millimeter, my general advice is if you have to remove the tool head and reinstall it, that you go through, a quick calibration print and do some basic testing, because things are going to shift by, a few hundredths of a millimeter, almost guaranteed. Theoretically, if TMV would be an option down the road, if that gets developed and is robust, then you won't really have to, because TMV could theoretically calculate the correct offsets and deal with that after the fact.
Yeah, I think I'm going to run into issues with this print here in that it's all these small features are there's not enough volume
Filament.
to take
I've seen
care
that
of
some as well.
what's oozed. But it's looking great. It's looking great. Would it make sense to have the skirt go to the height of the print to form a purge tower? It probably would, Mito.
Yeah, like a draft shield, essentially.
Yep.
I think there's a setting for that.
Is there a setting for draft shield?
I believe so, yep. Let's see here. There was a question on what is the usable XY distance. So for this, kind of like the stock Tridex, essentially what Steve has, with the 350 by 250 frame and a 250 by 250 build plate, the X dual material or dual tool head reachable area is 205 by 255. Obviously, if you got a bigger frame, you could get a bigger print area, but that's the default.
Need to purge buckets and brushes.
And the thing is, like, one of the things I like about IDEX, at least in the prints I've done, is if we can get the ooze figured out and make sure that it's primed or something like that just a little bit without a full purge block, you end up saving a lot of material and time in your prints, because your switch time is a second or two instead of going off and printing on a purge block for a while and using up extra waste.
Right.
So that's one of the advantages.
Great stream, guys. I really love the work you guys are putting into it. My Trident is about 900 hours old. Awesome. Everything, love using it. That's great.
Is it just me or the tool head seem wobbly? I think if you look at the reference of the the frame, when it's moving around, the camera is still and the frame's moving, and then the tool head's moving. So you just get a little bit of that added up together.
And there's probably some frame rate artifacts there too, I think.
Michael Quigley with, would purge buckets be better than wipers? I would love to see like a solution where I've seen before where you purge like a little puck of filament and then flick it off. That would be like an ideal solution for this. But again, if someone wants to develop that, I would be happy to install that on my printer.
Yeah. For my tool changer, I purge then wipe between changes.
Yep, and that would make sense. I think one of the original ones I tested was I was trying to purge kind of right when the tool had parked, and then it solidified, and then I'd knock it off. But then, per your point, if it oozes, then you have that void of filament that you're going to under extrude at the beginning of the next move.
Yeah, I think. So if I enable an ooze shield, is there a setting in? Let's look here. Is there a setting in Prusa Slicer for an ooze shield that's not just a tall skirt?
It should. Yeah, it's basically a tall skirt.
What is interface shells? Force a generation of solid shells between adjacent material volumes. Useful for multi-extruder prints with translucent material or manual soluble support material. I don't think that's it, right?
Correct.
Is it just a tall skirt?
No, I feel like there's a ooze prevention.
Is this in here? Oh, draft shield.
Yeah,
draft shield. Right there?
Probably, yep. Yeah, that's probably it.
Now, does that do both extruders, or does it do?
Go ahead and slice it and see what happens.
Yeah.
Diro Senth says, I am thinking about making an IDEX for perimeter infill printing using a massive 1.2 millimeter for infill and 0.25 for perimeters. Any chance that the Tridex gantry will be modified for V2 support? Someone has a V2 IDEX printer. That's up to them if they will release anything or develop it. At this time, I don't plan on doing any V2 support. Based on the limitations I said before, the stiffness of the gantry is pretty critical, and I think Trident frame is a little bit better base for it. So that's weird. Why is it showing green? Oh, there we go. Perfect. So it looks like it does do both.
Yeah, and it did. So I'm going to enable that for the next one.
Okay.
That will probably run. As far as I can tell, the alignment is great.
Nice.
So minimal filament extrusion length, I'm guessing, is what's dictating. If I change this to like 10, that shield should get thinner, right? Because that was pretty thick on the last one. Yep, it did. So we'll do this. We'll do 10 millimeters is what it's going to extrude as part of this ooze shield.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we'll go back here.
Someone said just got to adjust T1 height. Did you end up adjusting that?
I did not. But yeah, this is awesome. I'm happy. Yeah, that looks really good.
Have you seen how the Snapmaker J1 handles the nozzle oozing? Their tool change looks really fast. I have not. That would be a good thing to check out and see how that is.
Hey, I'm getting an accumulation of filament on this.
Yep.
There we go.
Yeah, the early IDEX prints I have have a lot of little whiskers on it from the wipers not working well. But again, once I had the triangular kitchen spatula, it seemed to work really well. I didn't really have many that stuck around. So. You can wipe in the infill as well. That would be an interesting idea. Yep.
Oh, so it starts the infill first? Does it start the infill first? Because if it prints,
that would be
prints its perimeters first, then it doesn't help. I would imagine that it should. If it's wipe into infill, it should be.
Yep. The other thing I'd say, just for people listening, if there is, if you build a Tridex and you want to help out, if there's something that you want to update or think can improve, just reach out. Again, I think this is a point where the community can really help kind of refine this and improve it. There's still work to do. Again, it may not ever be a real release, but where people want to step in and they're passionate about it, it can improve it. So.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop this print so we can make a couple of adjustments and start it with the draft shield and see what happens.
Awesome.
So I'm so happy. This is cool.
It's always fun seeing it switch back and forth. It's just, yeah.
I know. Well, and I'm excited for what I can do with this now.
Yep.
All those skirts are going to be easier. It's going to be automated, basically.
Yep.
Even just a layer change, filament change. You don't have to sit there and then swap the filament. It'll be, like I said, automated instead. So we're going to go here, and then my gut says that this shouldn't be quite a full minus 0.5. So I'm going to go like 0.3.
Minus 0.05. Okay. You mean 0.03?
I did. I meant 0.03.
Good. Just making sure.
So
that would be a sad end to a build plate.
These Princess sheets are pretty durable.
Yeah.
I've ground into them and not been able to tell. So let's stop this now. And then get keep everything warmed up. Oops, I need to save the config for what I just changed.
Brett W, I just got my Tridex printing last week. Had lots of issues with CAN thanks to the BTTU2C, but really satisfying now that it works. Ordered some hips last night. That is awesome. I'm glad that you were able to get it working, and I'm excited to see how you like the hips and ABS prints.
Yeah.
And Maker 3D printing, I'm starting a Tridex build sometime this month. It was really exciting.
Awesome. All over the place. I am happy to have built this. I'm confident that this is going to be usable.
Yep.
And more than usable, useful.
Yep. I'm happy with how, one of the concerns I had initially was, if it's a massively different printer and it's just a lot of complexity, it could be really a pain to deal with. I think I'm really happy with how simple the changes are to get it working. There's not a lot of extra parts. It's similar concepts to the rest of the Voron ecosystem. So again, most of it is pretty well tuned, other than the wipers, and macros and stuff like that.
Lots of opportunity for optimization, but
yep,
it 100%. appears to work. Let's see what we can see here. Come on, focus. What do you think? Is that coming up for you yet?
Not yet. I am live, so it should be in just a second.
That looks really good to me. Gotta let the YouTube buffer go through.
Yeah.
It's off just a tiny bit, I think.
Yep. And that's the nice thing about this type of print is that you can, it's such a small amount, but the gaps and kind of overlapping, you can kind of see where it goes. So are you going to shift X at all?
Yeah. So it looks like I need to shift X even more that way. So 1.3 wasn't enough. Maybe I go 1.5. It looks like, because
I'm almost wondering if the change is a slight combination of a little bit of X and a little bit of Y. And I say that because on the one side, there's a little bit of gap in the side red sections. And so it doesn't look like it's completely an X move. It might be a combination of two.
It might. It's really hard to tell from the...
Yep.
Maybe
And again,
a
the nice
point.
thing is, the nice thing is that can be like a, you know, 5 minutes in, and you can have another one tested. So.
Maybe a minus 0.1.
Yep.
I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna go 1.5 and minus 0.1.
Perfect.
So let's go back here.
And Bill Brothers, I agree. Your Big Tree Tech Can videos got me through the nut hole. Thanks for those. Yeah, and great. I think the nice thing is like I put those out fairly early on, and it's great seeing other people step up with a bunch of other variants, because there's so many can boards out there now that I don't really have time to make tutorials for all the different variants, but hopefully the overarching concepts of what to do still apply. So.
Yeah, a little bit of a diagonal move there. Okay, let's keep this thing.
Tom Tuttle, planning on a Tridex to replace my TL D3 Pro IDEX. I'm wondering about tap time frame. So I am not doing anything with the tap. That's a community effort. I believe there's a thread on the Doom Discord talking about that. So I would check in on that and see where the community is at and if there's something available.
Yeah, and I'm seeing the mentions of your videos. So just a reminder, everybody, that there is a link to Eddie's channel in the description. Link to Eddie's channel and the link to the GitHub for this. Okay, we are going to start this again. I think everything is good. Filament's loaded. Let me make sure that I had uploaded. Yep, I uploaded the latest version. Let's home it.
Man Amp says, I tried several IDEX printers. Almost all of them are nearly impossible to calibrate. I think the calibration is one of the most difficult parts. And that's kind of why theoretically, Steve is going to get his calibration offset set. And as long as he doesn't change too many things, they should apply, moving forward, based on, the repeatability we have on homing the tool heads against each other and things like that. I think adding the TAMV camera system on top of that may make it to the point where it's almost like set and forget. It gets close with the standard offsets and then just slight adjustments to fine tune. Yeah, but I would love to have an IDEX system that's just super robust. You don't have to worry about it. And my Tridex right now, I feel kind of like that about mine. So
yeah. I'm looking forward to trying the TAMV stuff. So there's a friend of Noob who has it set up, and they say it's working really well for him using this same camera that you and I both. It looks like the same camera we've all bought.
Exactly. Yep. Eddie needs an AI pic. I actually did update my Eddie the Engineer Gmail account. I did update the logo, but it hasn't populated through to the thing there yet. Let's see here. Double Tap is on my GitHub, which you can see in the Doomcube Discord from Steve. Thanks, Steve, for sharing that.
Yeah.
Subscribed, Eddie the Engineer. Thanks. I haven't put out any content recently just because of work's been in the way, but I do have some stepper dyno results I would love to make a video about one day when I get some time.
That'd be awesome. Okay. I'm super happy. Super happy. What cam is that? So this camera is off of Amazon, and it is that. It's generic digital microscope. So I don't know what it takes to actually use it, but this is what folks are using. Do you take the camera module out of this, Eddie?
I haven't.
You're using
unfortunate. It's massive.
So you're losing a lot of Z height at that point, right?
So again, my hope would be that you could stick it behind. Maybe you have to angle it slightly, but if you could stick it behind the bed, then it would have the vertical height.
Okay.
There's also another, there's a really tiny camera that I have as well that I haven't tested out, but it's in a form factor that would be able to mount to the front to back Z bed extrusion maybe. So that's another option.
This was not so answering next question, this was not an LDO kit, but it is LDO steppers and frame, and I think rails, but the rest of it was self-sourced. This is a very early Trident. This isn't the development Trident, but it was the first one I built after developing Trident. Okay, that is done. So let's start the print. Is there adjustment screw or something to get second tool head to level of first? No, there's a calibration though. There's an offset calibration.
We did talk on that a little bit earlier with the Steve, with his work on the double tap. Theoretically, you might be able to do some sort of offset screw to adjust the height of the second tool head, but at this point, since you're only able to print dual material, like one tool head and then the other, that Z offset is just a 0.1, 0.2 millimeters, and you can adjust the offset during the print when it switches tool heads.
We have 400 plus people here. Holy moly! I don't have that.
Super fun.
Yeah, and I know you're way beyond what you expected, but it sounds like we're both having a lot of fun here.
Subscriber race between Steve and I. Steve will definitely surpass me.
I've almost caught you.
Yep, it's almost there. That's hilarious. I'm surprised that my subscribers still keep going up based on I haven't uploaded a video in 4 months, but probably this stream and you pointing over to me has helped out a good amount. So, yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm getting some skip steps here. I can kind of hear it. I need to
skip steps with
the extruder.
What current do you have it set up?
0.5.
Got it. Okay. I think I'm at 0.6 maybe.
Yeah. I want to change out this PTFE tube. Just loading it was way more friction than it should have been than I get on any other printer.
Yeah, that's not good.
I'm just keeping a close eye on this first layer.
So double ERCF possible, Eddie. So that was actually one of the fun things we've thrown around. So if you kept one, you could do double ERCF, or another interesting thing would be you could have an ERCF for the primary tool head. So you could have multicolor prints, and then you could have the secondary tool head for your soluble support. So you could do 8 different colors with soluble supports on like a single print, which would be awesome. But I'm assuming the macros for that would be absolutely insane. So
I probably should have left the ooze shield a little higher value. I'm still getting some. Enough. Yeah, it seems like it.
Thanks, BA. Yeah, I'm looking forward to making another video sometime. I said I was going to do it over the holidays, but I didn't end up getting that done. So.
Hey, Jared, welcome. Sorry. Go ahead.
Love your content, even if it goes way over my head. I try to explain stuff in a way that is approachable, but sometimes things can get pretty nerdy. So.
Lauren, thanks for the gift of memberships. Let's see what this is looking like alignment-wise. It looks good, but the real test is when I pull it off of there and look at it from the bottom.
Exactly.
But it's super close. What we got?
Yeah, so the thing that's held me back with the stepper videos is that they're so nerdy that like I could dump a bunch of data out there, but unless I like go through the concepts behind it, it's going to be really like really confusing. So my next video, I'm trying to do more details back on how stepper motors work, and how like all the currents and torque and everything like that's related, so that some of the later information about torque testing and speed testing and sound and everything like that will make more sense.
Lay some foundation first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But going through that foundation and figuring out how to explain it and illustrate it is tricky.
Yeah, this is yay. What do we have? Still easier with a calibration ruler. Done that on a Chimera. I need to play around with the Chimera on the Legacy or the Voron kit at some point. But this is going to get some use.
Yep. There's these little low poly Pokemon characters that are really cute. I think one of the past streams I've done a set of those, and but yeah, and then printing soluble supports and peeling off the hips and just having this absolutely perfect ABS like overhang underneath it is just so satisfying.
Yeah.
XY motors are NEMA 14 like V0. Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Since the NEMA 14 for V0 are 1.8 degree steppers, and there's 4 of them, there's actually plenty of torque and speed for this printer. And it was required to use the NEMA 14 because the NEMA 14 is actually between the vertical extrusions of the frame and the print axis for Y. And so if you use a NEMA 17, you'd lose a good amount more Y travel. Eddie, do you have any content, know of any tuning the steppers so we can turn off Stealth Chop but still have them quiet-ish? That is a great question. I have been capturing some sound data and like doing sound spectrum analysis on different stepper motors and settings, but other than increasing the microstepping and probably reducing current, yeah, I feel like even the same model, certain different samples of the same model may have some variation. So that's one of the things I want to demystify and get data on, but it's going to take time. So
I screwed it up.
What, the offsets are not right?
No, I tried to grab a blob and it pulled the skirt loose.
Yep.
I fiddled with it and I screwed it up.
Yep. I had 3D Chameleon. So the purge, because since there's so many small little, it's always retracting, and you're always switching back and forth and printing such a small amount per layer. It's really, you have a lot of like pitting and stuff like that. So. Domenico, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. So I think I'm going to stop this again because I've screwed it up, and I'm going to increase the purge on that shield so it's a little larger, and we're going to get a little bump in the stream. It's hiccuping right now.
Okay.
But I'm going to stop this, and we're going to compare that bottom layer compared to the previous print. Is there actually a DEX Voron design out there? It seems like a way easier way to achieve multi-material prints. This is the closest to an IDEX of official Voron that there is.
Yeah, and I think it with the right documentation, I think it could be official, but I think the level of complexity, for a newcomer, I'm not saying you are one, but we do have a lot of people building printers that are, building their first printer or things like that. This one is really complicated. It's twice the fun. And so if you know what you're doing, you can probably, if you build a Voron, you can probably build this with the available knowledge that's out there. just is going to be a little bit more of a adventure.
So I think I went just a little too far on the X offset. So I'm going to go split the difference at 1.4.
Okay.
Just looking at the bottom. And that's all I'm going to change here because I felt like the first layer looked pretty even.
Nice.
So we're just going to grab any ooze off of these.
Dependent dual extrusion, 2 nodules on the same carriage. Like a chimera, or like both hot ends are on like a movable axis on the same carriage that can move up and down, like a Ultimaker.
No. Is that?
It was a comment about he meant IDEX as in dependent dual extrusion.
Oh.
And
what does that mean?
Yeah. Are there any models available by anyone that would facilitate toolhead alignment other than printing this model? So there's the one he had printed before that does have kind of indicator marks on how much you should adjust the offsets. But once you get pretty close, in general, I think kind of the process we've gone through today is one of the best, just to make sure, because certain things can be really close, but until you see the kind of gaps, it's a little bit difficult to tell. In Ultimaker style, yeah, I think that would be really cool to have some sort of tool head like that and be able to switch back and forth. I haven't really looked into doing that, and I'm not sure that I know of anyone on the Voron team that has, but that would be an interesting path for this as well. The size of the power supply, it has to power both hot ends. Actually, the power supply for this that I'm using, and I believe Steve's using, is 200 watts still.
Mm-hmm.
There is, based on kind of the power consumption of the stepper motors and the hot ends, as long as you're not doing something crazy like trying to heat up 2 rapidos at the same time, like a 40 or 50 watt hot end times 2 is still plenty. The stepper consumption is fairly low. So.
Okay. Well,
Look how excited Charlie is by it all.
Yes. Is there a link to the model? The model that I'm using, if you search for Moai, M-O-A-I, on Thingiverse, because I couldn't actually find this dual color version of this on printables. But if you go to Thingiverse and search for, it's either Easter Island statues or Moai, will bring up the dual color version. A bigger distance from the skirt would help out here, I guess. That's true. But I want a little more surface area there too. Make the walls a little thicker.
Polymaker giveaway.
Polymaker giveaway. We got 10 more minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yep.
10 minutes. So the link is in the description and the pinned post. Okay, let's get this going. I'm going to home and get this print going. Just pick off, give myself a nice fresh start with filament ooze.
Yep. Yes, calibration cube, like the calibration cube. So this is another really good point. If you make a basic like 40 millimeter calibration cube where you can put a caliper and measure the offsets directly. So if you measure like 2 different places and see, if one dimension's 39.8 and the other one's 40.2, you know what your offset shift is. It's hard to explain, but yes, there should probably be a cube like that we make, because then you could just caliper measure all those dimensions and get a good concept. I actually think I made one in CAD, so maybe I can even upload it to
get your offsets.
Yeah, because then you can actually caliper measure it instead of having to cite it.
Yeah, that would be handy. Okay. And a bed mesh. Hi, Tim.
Comsty said, if I want to build a Tridex with useful build plate of 300 by 300, then I need a frame from a 350. So if you want a actual 300 by 300 dual material or dual tool head build area, you actually need a so the Y dimension is the 300 millimeters, same as stock, but the X is actually going to be 450 millimeters wide. So it's going to be a massively wide printer, and those belts are going to be super long. So, you know, I think that would be a really great build size, you know, because 300 by 300 is a nice kind of average size to get a lot of different models. But again, the concern really is around, you know, how long the X belts are. If you could figure out a way to do 9mm belts for the X belts, that might help with the stiffness for a build like that. But again, it's a pretty major design change to be able to fit 9mm belts into this.
Keith Kuda, is your silicone wipe even touching the nozzle during the park to move? It is not. I need some adjustments there. There are lots of optimizations that can be made on this build. That's one of them.
Steve says that's what mine is. So you're using a 450 by 300 millimeter frame. So yeah, it's definitely, I think there's always a balance between managing expectations and like anything's possible. And since I haven't personally used it, granted Steve has, so we have a data point that it's working. So it's just a question of trade-offs and realizing that as you go bigger, you will have some negative effects, but maybe those aren't really a big reason or a big issue. So,
hey, Mark, thanks for being a member. Yes, Charlie is in a deep sleep.
Yep, my camera is turned off because of internet connection issues. So,
yeah. Yep. I need to contact my provider. Okay, we are going to try this again. Let's see the update
well,
file.
I think I am wrapping up for today.
That is awesome. Thank you very much for being here.
It's been so much fun hanging out and talking and getting to see this print. And yeah, definitely, again, the few things, if there's any issues you guys have while building, you know, you can talk in Discord, see if someone else has had the issue and has a solution. But if you want to contribute on any macros, any tweaks, anything like that, please open an issue ticket on the Tridex GitHub repo, because then we can kind of track those, and we'll just see how it goes from there. But again, I think there's a lot of optimizations in the wiper, in the macros, and things like that can make this more user friendly. So.
Yeah, So everybody, I'd like to thank Eddie for being here. Thank you for this build. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm very much looking forward to actually using this. Not just the build here. This is as much about using it as the build, because of what it enables, the different things to be able to do in future builds. So, yeah.
And it is the Doomcube Discord that we have a channel in there for the Tridex build. And people like Steve, who and a lot of other people that have been more active than I have in that channel have probably know more than I do at this point on where the issues are and what the progress has been. So, thanks everyone.
So I will put a link in the description to the Doom Discord.
Perfect.
Because that would probably be a good thing. But with that,
sounds great.
Thank you again. I will chat with you later.
Awesome. Sounds good. Catch you later.
Thanks.
Have a good one, Steve. Bye.
So that was awesome. And I can get rid of these, which is even better. That worked out pretty well, aside from some hiccups with the provider. Someone asked who my provider is. It's Wave Cable. They're in the Sacramento area. They're up in Washington. That they go by a different name, and I don't remember what it is. But if I missed a question that you want to bring back up, tag me, please. We're 3 minutes from the Polymaker giveaway. And let me turn my music up so I can actually hear it now. I am a bit low on volume. I wonder why. I should be good. There might be something weird with my setup based on having that going. Let's try this. Yep, I'm on the right microphone. I do not have fiber internet. And let's see what this is doing right now. I think on red, I'm skipping steps from the from that filament tube. I think I've got major problems there. I went low when I took the headset off. Is it okay now? Is it okay right now? You should get the PIF program for dual colors. Is my sound fine? Okay. So what's going on right now is the blue is actually looking pretty good aside from that blob in the back corner. But red has gotten in the way because it skipped steps. I'm probably gonna have to cancel this print. Let's see what happens with it. Okay. We have 2 more minutes till the Polymaker giveaway. But I've got some, maybe we'll play around with that after this. I don't have fiber. I have a gigabit download and it's supposed to be 30 megs upload, which is a little higher than typical cable service because it's a cable service. Let me see. I need to leave that other. Hold on. I need to leave this other meeting. That might help a little bit. We can close that. Okay. It's because I choose blue and red. Hey, John. We're gonna need to fix the tube. So why don't I cancel this right now? And while we're doing the giveaway, I'll let the printer cool down. Actually, I don't want to. I can remove the filament, and we'll see if we can find something that's a little better than that. We're gonna make some tweaks here for the last part of the stream. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause this and stop it. And I'm just gonna take the opportunity to pull the filaments. There we go. So let's get those out of the way and we'll let all of that cool down. So it is time. The printer noise might be affecting my voice. Could be. The fans are going like crazy, so let me turn those fans off. I'm giving you an extra minute or so to enter the giveaway. Do you use the Calibrate Z? I have on other printers and I have not had consistent first layers. When I went to tap, my first layer consistency went way up. I don't mess with my first layers on my tap machines, where I was messing with them on my Calibrate Z machines. I am about to do the drawing. So let's see here. We have all the responses. We have a good number of responses. This is perfect. 429. I'm turning it off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. No longer accepting responses. This was great. Eddie was so awesome to come on here and take his time to chat about this, and that was awesome. Okay, we'll create a spreadsheet. Let me bring up Wheel of Names. And delete the old ones. come back here. Okay, let me get these copied over. Scott, thanks for the memberships. You just entered the stream 1 minute too late. I'm sorry, Glenn. Let's see here, and Control C. Oh yeah, I gotta, I gotta get rid of the hat. Paste those names in there. Okay, we need a number to shuffle. What do we want to do? What is today? The 15th, between 1 and 15. I got louder when I switched to the screen capture. I'll check my settings. Something is going on. So between 1 and 15, what do we got? We got lots of 42s. Okay, we're gonna go 5 because it's 2 for IDEX, but 3 for Trident. So 2 plus 3 equals 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And spin. Let's see who we got. Gotta be here. Gotta be here. Where's my phone? I need my timer. Who do we got? Grotto. Grotu. Grotto. Grotu. Congratulations. Are you here? Tag me. Someone else tag me if you see them. Grotto, are you here? 1 roll of Polymaker filament. Let's see. Is Grotto here? Congratulations, Grotto. You got 1.5 minutes to. Are they taggable? They seem taggable. But you got to be here. Grotto. Let's see. I'm trying to keep track. Oh, I thought they were taggable. I thought I saw something come up. Where you at, Grotto? We got 1 minute left. Not taggable. Okay. But that doesn't mean they're not here. Or they're not coming back from getting a sandwich. It's right about that time. We got 30 seconds. Has anybody seen them? Oh, the timer's on. Well, I set a timer at the right time. Grotto is gone. We got 15 seconds left. 1 roll. So we give away 1 roll. 1 roll every Sunday stream. Sandwich sounds good. My stomach's starting to growl. You came down off a ladder putting in a new camera mount for this? I'm gonna, oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, Grotto. We did not see you, so we will be re-rolling. Let's remove, and let's go a number between 1 and 10. Let's go with a number between 1 and 10. So the way this works is I will email you, and there will be a little form that you fill out, and on that form will be an SKU number you get to pick. You get to go out to the Polymaker website, and every filament there has an SKU number associated with it. There are some exclusions. You can't get their nylon 12. You can't get some of the polycarbonates, but it's all listed on the form. But any ASA, TPU, PLA, all that. So let's see. I see a lot of 9s. Let's go 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and spin. So my goal here at this point with this stream is to get a print started well. This print didn't start well. Christian, are you here? I think I've seen your name in there. If not this stream, then previous streams. Oh, let me start my timer. So that's the goal today, is to get a print started well so it at least can finish off camera and I can post some pictures of it. So, Christian, are you here? Congrats, Christian, where you at? Tag me. There you are. There you are. Awesome. Congratulations. I will send you an email later. Let me get this copied and pasted. Hey, Scott. Thanks for being a member. Okay. Yep. I gotcha. Let me make sure I've got an email address in here that makes sense. Yep. We are good. These giveaways are worldwide. These are worldwide. So awesome. Got you in there. Okay. This print did not go well because I'm pretty sure the filament tube here there's just something wrong with it. So I'm gonna try this, yeah, because this is way more work than it should be pulling this filament out. It should be smooth. And I think it's causing the stepper to skip. I think it's worldwide within a reasonable limitation. I don't know what specific exclusions apply. If you are in an area where it does not apply, which I don't know what that is, then it's up to you to figure out how to get it. Excuse me. This was 3mm ID tubing. At least I think so. I looked at it. Let's pull it out and see. In the background, yes, this is a V0.2. This is the one that was on the V0.2 live that was printing. You didn't get the notification until hour 3? That's a bummer. Christian's in Norway. Awesome. What do I think about Mobile Raker? I haven't used it. And thank you for reminding me to remove the giveaway pin. Okay. Loosen that up. And then this should just pull through here. And let me double check that this is, maybe in my excitement. Yeah, that's it is not 3mm. So I grabbed the wrong stuff and I did not look at it with my better glasses. So yeah, my bad. This is why it's important to use to use 3mm ID tubing for this. Would you add a 100-watt bed heater to the V0? It is a 100-watt on this one. I have a 100-watt bed heater. It doesn't make a huge difference. It's not, I mean, it's just heat up time. It still works well. Is this, let me see if this is 3mm. This one's 3mm. Yep. So you're gonna do ERCF on one tool head? No. This is my 2 tool head, we're done. Did you check on the Type 5 paracord? I couldn't find it. I couldn't find Type 5. If you search for it, I didn't see anything that looked like it was it. Why do we need mobile raker? What's the benefits over main cell fluid in a browser? I'm not sure. I haven't used it. I'm at 24 volts, 100 watt, which requires... I have a larger power supply as well on my 100 watt heaters. Can I do a live build of the Enraged Rabbit carrot patch and show how the Enraged Rabbit king seat work? Is the king seat done? That's a possibility for a future. Paracord Planet is where to get type 5. Okay, I'll try to remember that. If you've messaged me on Discord, send me that keyword there. So we are going to set this up with the correct PTFE tube. So that was my bad. What is your usual max heat up power in your config for your bed heater? For the V0s, I set it at 100%. For the larger printers, I usually set it between 0.6 and 0.7. What is the plan for the next members stream? We are going to assemble a Prusa Mini kit. Here, let's try this. There we go. Is paracord what you use for the cables? No, this is some nylon sleeving I got off Amazon. It's 4 millimeter, but I probably would go 6 millimeter if I was doing it again. Can I use ClearPet G for the Trident's LED? Yes, absolutely. Just use ClearPet G. Any of the LDO kits come with a small sample of ClearPet G. Now I'm louder. I've got some... Let's try that. Does that help? Oops. Does that help at all? I don't know. Oh, and Charlie's gone. He wants out. Oh. Okay, go. Is this... Oh, it's still locked up. So let's disable the motors. Yes, that's the box you spotted. Okay. Disable motors. So I can move this. I'll have to figure out because I totally disassembled my my setup here to do the Shapeoko stream in the other garage. So we're gonna go there, and then gonna go about like that. Quieter. I wonder what happened. Why it's being weird. Yep, there. And then this has the big difference on this new PTFE tube holder is there's a clamping feature to hold the tubing in place. And then this one. It switches between different screens, which is really weird because it's all the same input. So I'm just gonna have to go through my settings. As long as it's usable, as long as it's acceptable, I'm not gonna worry about it right now. Oops. Oops, oops, oops. All right, let me let Charlie in. Come on, Charlie. In. And I am hopefully grabbing a granola bar. My stomach's rumbling. I'll throw that tube holder out on my GitHub. I owe you folks the side skirts too. I don't think the lav mic is glitching. It's probably a setting. I am positive the clamping feature is not pinching the PTFE. It was the wrong diameter. It was 1.9 on the other stuff. Okay. See you, John. Okay, pull this in to there. About. Let's see, that's about right. Ooh, see you, Fizzy. 5 a.m. in Singapore. Wow. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's see if we're gonna do another tweak here. So those are on now. Let's get the filament back in there. Charlie's being a needy little guy and wanting back out again. Oh yeah, that makes a difference. That's smooth. There we go. Then blue. Let Charlie out. Oh, the watch face. Sorry, I have something in the back of my throat from the granola bar. Hey, 3DP. Okay. Yeah, that's way different. Okay. Should go that way, but that's okay. I don't know what he wants, but Charlie wants back in already. He's playing. Yep. What do you want? Okay. You can try again. So I changed the PTFE tubing from 2mm ID to 3mm ID because I grabbed the wrong stuff before. So okay, the other thing I want to change is I want to try see if I can raise these wipers just a little bit. So let's home this and then move the bed down. He does want attention. Is there a pinched cable on the left? No, everything's good. Okay, let's home this. I think we're okay. It's awfully low, but it's okay, I think. Yep. The STL for the wipers is in the GitHub. It's in the GitHub for the Tridex. It's in the description. Okay, Charlie. This is not gonna fly. You can go back to sleep. Seems that in my Trident, the rear lead screw is not exactly parallel to the rail. Any ideas what could cause that? The rear lead screw is not parallel to the rail. Realize on any Trident, let's see if we can get a view here. This is the rear rail, right? It's offset from this extrusion here. This is the gantry extrusion. It should be the rear vertical extrusion should be 4 millimeters that way from this extrusion. If you tried to line them up with this extrusion here, then it's off. Does that make sense? If the rear vertical extrusion is lined up with this extrusion, front and back, then it's not correct. It needs to be back by 4 millimeters. Did I finally discover why the heads move apart on Y homing? No, I did not. We haven't figured that out yet, but it's something to continue to work on. Why is there 2 Y end stops? Because there's 2 different steppers, 2 different belt paths, and that also helps to auto de-rack everything. Okay, this is homed. Let's move this down. So I want to take these wipers and see if I can loosen them and just kind of shift the wipers up just a little bit. Ideally, I would recut them, but I'm hoping I can just take them and shift them up a little bit and have them still be in place. And then I'm gonna shift the front ones up a little bit. Maybe some tweezers. I got the rear one up. Let's try that on this. Let's disable motors and see how this is. So that stops there and that actually hit. There's not a lot of extra room here to do this, so I'll recut these pieces just a little bigger, but this might get us past it a little bit. The Y homing issue could be caused by different kinds of end stop switches used on the axis. Depending on the manufacturers, they may trigger at a slightly different force. It feels like it's triggering okay, but I don't know. Oh, did I freeze a bit? Where are we at? Looks like we're good now. Big buffer. Okay, we are ready to try this again. I think we're ready to do another print. I'm gonna clean the bed again just in case I was touching it. Okay. And let's get it heating up. I think the last one failed mostly because of the friction and the PTFE. Dual color less than hex tray. No, we got to do a Moai. That's Eddie's favorite calibration print, so we got to do that. My OCD doesn't really like the XY tensioner bolt positioning. Well, it's got to be in line with the pulleys. So, to be most effective. The wiper material is linked in the Tridex build of materials, and this is what it actually looks like. It's a sheet of silicone mat, And it's super easy to cut. Cuts like butter. And you just cut it into strips for the ends. I've just checked my extrusion is offset a bit less than 4 millimeters. I guess they may be the issue. At least check all of that. So in reality, this rear extrusion should be in line with the corner extrusion. So you should be able to stick a straight edge across the back, and this rear extrusion should be right up against it. If the misalignment is in your rear Z stepper, then I would make sure that the bolts that are holding that to the frame are tightened evenly on top and front. Does that work better than a wire brush? It's not, I don't know. I don't know what the ideal solution is. Have you thought about trying some of that filament repellent paint? The slice stuff? Hell no. Hell no. Okay. You can get turbocharged hose offcuts for the wiper from your, oh, okay. It's the same silicone, you can probably get it for free. Okay, this is warmed up. Let me get all this extra filament crap off the nozzles. Start with a clean slate. No rant, we're good. One of the particulars about this setup is we home in Y first, right? So we home in Y first, which means if this tool head happens to be lined up with my probe, whether it be a clicky or a Euclid or whatever, you could potentially dislodge that in this Y homing move. So I just make sure it's out of the way. If it happens to pick up the probe, it still misses. It doesn't hit. It can do all of its homing with the probe on the tool head. And then the macros dock it before it does an actual homing move. So I'm using a Euclid probe. I just happen to be using a Euclid probe, but I'm using it with the clicky macros because I'm using Eddie's configuration, and it is an older version of the clicky macros. So that's why I also have it oriented in this direction as well. Okay, things are warmed up. We are good to home and stuff. And let's see if we get a little better filament ooze control with those repositioned silicone wipers. Where are we at? Have you let your CNC loose on anything? No, I haven't gotten back out there. I put off Tridex prep until the last minute. Don't do that, but I did. And that's what I've been concentrating on since that was done. So now, hopefully today or tomorrow, I'm gonna do some real cuts. Okay, that's done. Now we Z-tilt. I did vacuum up it was a very small mess of foam from Thursday. I got that all cleaned up. Is the V0 display worth it? I like it. I think it adds a lot to the functionality of the printer. I like being able to walk up to a printer and have some basic information and make some basic changes. So Yeah. Would a 2.5 millimeter ID PTFE tube work on reverse Bowden? Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be fine. The common stuff to get is 3 millimeter ID though. This is exciting though. I'm gonna put panels on it next. Probably not on stream, but I have the panels all set up. I put foam on them and everything. This is the top panel. I'll do that after I revise this rear entrance with some angles and see how that works. But, oh, there's that. Now we got a bed mesh. Oh, there's Charlie. Okay, you're coming over here and you're just gonna sit here because I don't want you in the middle of the printer. Okay, so bed mesh. Hey, Marcel. I've been up and about. So the Shapeoko streams taking me away out of the house and moving around so much. I'm sure he's feeling a little neglected. Okay, but I'm gonna keep you away from the printer. No, you can't go in there. Love my Doom Cube. I do not. I need to. I haven't set up adaptive bed mesh yet. Six-hour snowmobile ride. Fun. It's a boy. Female cat's much more needy. Is it possible to get more needy than him? You can use your CNC to cut panels as well as use a diamond drag bit for designs on the panels. Yep. Yep. There's so much cool stuff I can do with that. Ooh, it's starting to rain pretty hard. I can hear that. Yeah, it's coming down. It's coming down. Ooh, I wonder if there's some hail in that. You can't hear it, I'm sure, but it's coming down good. Mine like to show her butt when I'm in meetings. She knows where the camera is. That's funny. Okay, so this is that. So now we just start the print. So let me get this moved over here and we'll just do this view here. And let's reprint. Yeah, let me make sure that I've got filament all the way at the end here. It looks like it, because I didn't actually purge them. Whoa, I didn't have this one in, apparently. There we go. Glad I checked that. Okay, we are going to reprint the job. There it goes. We've gotten more than 13 inches of rain this month. Wow. Okay, it's preheating. It's heating both. Any print on the V0 is adaptive. Yeah, fortunately around here, reservoirs are starting to fill up. They're up quite a bit. Okay. I'm gonna keep an eye on this. There's the filament. And it's gonna go there, and let's see if that repositioned silicone helps the ooze. It's not oozing out, which is a good thing. A little bit of ooze there. Yeah, that's the best. That's the best first skirt yet. Yeah. No noises from the extruder. I could hear the skipping in this extruder before. You know, that snow in the mountains is key, because that's the slow release water storage. No oohs and ahs. Zombie, what's the story behind the Prusa build surface bed? I like the Prusa sheets. They are by far my very favorite textured sheets out there. So I tend to use them on my 250 builds. I just sacrifice a little bit of Y travel. I even drilled extra holes in the back for locating pigs, so it sets in there right every time. Okay, let me look at how this one's going. Yeah. Yeah, we're looking good. Mm-hmm. And the other one with the silicone up against the nozzle is not oozing. It's not sitting there building up a ball of plastic. We are slightly off between the two nozzles for Z height, because this one is about perfect and the red tool 0 is still a little low. The filament sheets, I've never tried a filament sheet. Let's see. I've been following this build from Argentina. Thanks for being here. It's awesome to see it finally printing. I am so happy, because this is going to be very useful. Dual color print. Look at this guy. He's just chilling. Filament sheets have some of the nicest finish that I've used, and super thick. I haven't tried it. Are they available easily here in the US? I mean, you're in the US, so I'm just surprised I haven't heard of them. What do you think of the sheet that comes with the LDO 2.4 kit? They're fine. They're a nice fine texture, which is what I like. It's a little rougher than this. I heard Swatch Truck has a multicolor test model. I gotta go with Eddie's preference here. It's a hybrid Core XY, David. Is it capable of printing some high temp materials? It is not capable of printing POM. It is capable of printing nylon and polycarbonate, but not POM. Polar Ted has a filament bed on the VZ. Filament sheets are nice. I'll have to look into them. I'm a collector of filaments and a collector of build surfaces, apparently. I have several of the Honey Badger stuff, and I like it. I really like their P series, the satin one. That's what I've been using on the V0 here, the V0.2. And I have a Prusa size one, I have a 300, and then I have a V0 one. Amazon has the filament build plates, okay. How are we looking here? This is looking good. Oh, Charlie. Yeah. And the other nozzle is still not oozing, so that is much better. So one print head is Core XY and the other one is Cartesian? No, they're both kind of a Core XY, but there's still a combination of moves for each position. Have you tried the PTFE screws that they sell? What screws? What has your experience been? That who sells? PTFE screws that who sells? For those looking to do just multicolor and not multi-material, would you say this or ERCF? ERCF, because you're limited to 2 colors here. It's not really Core XY, it's a hybrid Core XY. But still, none of the steppers move. None of the steppers move with the gantry. Fabrico sells PTFE screws. Are you talking lead screws or actual just like M3 and M5 screws? I haven't tried them. Now I have the LDO coated lead screws, but I haven't tried any other brands. I do have some coated lead screws that are with the Mercury 1.1 kit. So remember, I'm building Micron next, and then after that, I'm starting on the Mercury 1.1 build with the Hydra bed. I just got all my stuff for it. I got my stuff yesterday. It's the beefy build plate. Hi, Stephen. Charlie, really enjoyed you having a guest on stream. Yeah, that was a blast. I was so happy that Eddie was able to make time. Is there enough space on the SB2040 to change the thermistor? I didn't see that. I don't know. I don't know if there's enough space to change any of those. Those are the ones that I'm referring to, so you haven't tried them. I haven't tried them yet. No. That is the stuff that ended up with Modbot, yeah. Is there a printer with 2 independent nozzle heads? As in both nozzles on the same head, like a E3D Chimera? How are we looking? I think we're looking good. That ooze shield is going to add some significant time to this print, but I think it's necessary. Yeah, Grotto, I'm sorry. You did miss the filament. seen some weird dual hot ends on some printers. Yeah, there's lots of ideas out there. Oh, like a true dual, like the dueling zero. That's an interesting setup. I like that because it reduces the weight on each gantry. I'm at a loss with this lead screw issue. Everything is square, but when I screw it down, it becomes a tiny bit off. When you screw the top screws or the bottom screws, tighten the top ones on the rear mount first, and then tighten the front ones. And pay attention to where it moves. Because really, if only the top ones are tight and then use the front ones just to line it up, you're good enough. It's also industrial true IDEX printers. Okay, Charlie, you need to go back to your sleeping spot because my arm's cramping up. Let's see if he settles down. Yeah, Charlie harness. He is gonna settle down. He'll usually do that. He'll insist on being on my shoulder for a little bit, but then I can set him down and yeah, he's there, so we can do that. There we go. He's not too broken. He's settled right down. He's not too upset. Will you make a video upgrading one of your V0 to V0.2? Yes, absolutely. At the very least, I will be updating the LDO V0 S1 to V0.2 once they have a kit for doing that. And then my intent is to at some point update my original V0.0, but I'll be using the Bowden setup. When I screw down the front ones, it shifts. Well, the front ones aren't critical. They're not that important. If it shifts out from the frame, make sure that when you tighten down the top ones, the mount is pushed all the way back before you tighten those front ones down. But as long as the top ones are tight, the front ones aren't as important if they're causing it to come out of alignment. Does it really ooze? Well, it doesn't ooze as much now that I changed the silicone wiper heights. So yeah, I know I'm buffering. Awesome, Ian. Printing 0.2 with the color scheme for my V2.4. That'll look good. Are we back yet? YouTube is still not happy. I've been watching your ERCF streams. I'm finally swapping my dual M4 stealth burner to CW2 with the ERCF and SV2040 as soon as parts show up. Thoughts on bearing Omron versus Hall effect for filament sensor? I don't know. You don't need one in the tool head anymore though, right? I would probably go with the no filament sensor at the tool head option. I'm back? Okay. I like your vids. I've been very loud. I have a very loud noise on my Voron AB motors on Voron 2.4. Is it possible that the belts rub? I checked belt gears alignment. It's okay. So it's super critical that the height of the pulleys on the AB steppers be lined up with your filament path. Is it a resonant noise or is it just a loud movement noise? Okay. Yeah, that is going to, as far as I know, this is going to finish. So, remember the ooze shield, it is always cool. It's like unwrapping a gift. Yeah. where are we at? So I think we're going to wrap this up in about the next 8 minutes. We'll put this at a 4-hour stream. I could use the extra time today because I have a whole network to replace, because I'm swapping my Amplify Alien out for some Unify equipment, and I want to go play with the CNC. But so stay tuned. I'll put up the schedule later this week for the member stream. The Charlie's Angel stream will be Saturday, and then we will start on the Micron build on Sunday. So, hey Max. I may have missed it, but this being complete, what's the next project? Next project is the Micron. Micron is coming next. It is loud movement on fast move. So I'd just be checking all the stuff in your gantry and the motion system. Check your the rails. Make sure they're not a source. I need someone to CNC me a rook frame. Isn't that kind of counter to the point? So they're like an eighth Ugga Dugga. Yeah, this is good. So my intent, no promises, but my intent is to look for opportunities to use this for future builds. So anywhere where it makes sense, I want to do that. So definitely easy things like no intervention, filament swaps just for like the skirts. That'll be good. See you, Golden Jaguar. Thanks for being here. So, and we'll try on an IDEX Flash Forward Creator Pro. This is my first IDEX experience, so need to do all the dual color skirts. Yep. And all the dual color tool heads. Yep. First live stream, great show. Really dig the positive vibes and solid info. Awesome. Thanks one who schemes. I said these are going well. I like the way these go. Just kind of hang out, build, learn something both ways. I have some hips. I have a whole roll of hips waiting for this. I designed some cool printer parts that are impossible to do without supports. I have that in my back pocket for when I really need supports. I do everything I can to not need to use supports, and I'm pretty successful at it. Power is dead on the power tool. Battery's dead. You're back. So, yeah, we're wrapping up. Yeah, I think we're good. So I guess I'll just say thanks for being here. This is finished. This build is finished. I got to put panels on it and I'll start using it, but we've got a print. I will post this print. I'll post it to the community tab and to Twitter. So you want just an UGG, not even on an Ugga Dugga. Print a stealth burner face in a 2-color swirl pattern. I kind of like that little hex pattern that someone made. I modified the Trident skirts to fit on an IKEA lac enclosure. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to all new members and everybody that gifted a membership. I hope to see all you members on Saturday and everybody on Sunday with a Micron. So have a good rest of your weekend and have a good week. And I will see you later. Bye.